meat necklace game, as they would call a buzzsaw they were walking into. And it did get interesting in the second half. We won't spend a ton of time on K-State, Texas Tech, but then you look up and the score was nearly 30 points.
It got to 13 at one point, I think. It was like somewhere 77-64, something like that.
They just could not stop anything defensively. No. Tech got pretty much everything they wanted, and now for Matthew Driscoll's bunch, it's just about finishing the year with some sort of pride. Maybe pull off another upset or two, but it's going to be pretty tough to do with this current group of K-State players. So we will talk majority college basketball in the 2 o'clock hour here. We'll talk with Matt Derrick, all things Chiefs from 3 to 3:30. Then right after that, we will preview KU and Houston again, but get the KU perspective from Henry Greenstein. We'll have to double check with that. Kyle will have to ask that. So I said it correctly one of those 2 times, and we definitely need to get that locked down before he gets on the show, because nothing's worse than mispronouncing somebody's name about 3 or 4 times when you're interviewing them. But we'll get his thoughts. He's been doing great work on Twitter covering KU hoops this year. Jayhawks are coming off of one of the most embarrassing losses in the Bill Self era. Clearly a trap spot, and they looked ahead. And boy, did Cincinnati make them regret that, because that's a Cincinnati team that is much higher on KenPom than you would think. They don't appear to be that 15-12 team that they are. And over the last 3 to 4 games, you go look at some of the advanced numbers, they're playing like a top 10 team. They're not a top 10 team, but the last 4 games against Kansas State, UCF, Baylor, I believe it was, and then Kansas, they've thumped everybody. And it comes off of the heels of when Wes Miller was apologizing to the students after the game, got emotional on the post-game radio interview. And what he did resonated with his team. Jerome Tang's outburst after that Cincinnati loss didn't really resonate with the team and didn't resonate with K-State athletics, as they fired him for cause. And I know we'll talk about that at a different date. But Cincinnati, boy, did they pummel Kansas. And Henry's going to have lots of thoughts on that. Darren Peterson thoughts, how they look defensively, and what they have tonight. And
an historic loss by Kansas in a couple of different ways. I looked this up that night. Largest home loss to an unranked team since March 10th of 1973.
Mercy.
When they lost to Iowa State. Largest home loss ever as a ranked team to an unranked team. Their previous record was 15, and a loss to Long Beach State in 1993 was also the largest home loss ever as a ranked team to an unranked conference opponent. Before that, it was 8, which happened twice, and they lost by 16.
It was a weird game because you felt a couple of times in the first half, a couple of times early in the second half, it's like, oh, here comes this run by Kansas. You know, they're going to have this bucket. Cincinnati's going to turn it over a couple of times, and you look up and KU's up 8, game's over. Yeah. Credit to Cincinnati and Wes Miller. They never caved.
They just kept scoring.
And they got a couple
of... That's what
you
have to do, and that's one bit, kind of a... Sorry to cut you off. There's one of a... Soren and I, we have kind of the same idea on the notion that when the team has a run against you, they just got to get a stop. They just got to get a stop.
Yeah.
No, you got to score a bucket. Because if you don't score, the run's still happening.
Yeah.
The run doesn't end until you score. And what Cincinnati did... every time it looked like K-State or Kansas was going to make a run, was they kept scoring, and that's why they were able to kind of hold on and push that number out. They just kept finding a way to put the ball in the bucket.
It was easy looks too.
Yeah,
I mean there were not a lot of challenging shots that Cincinnati was making. They played through the post, it crushed them inside, and that's been a strength for Kansas with Flory Badungu, who's one of the top shot blockers in the nation. Bryson Tiller had improved in that regard.
They got 2 guys and
non-existent in that game.
They couldn't take care of both of them.
Mustafa is who put up 28 points for Cincinnati. That was some NBA caliber stuff. Some of his repertoire in that game, it was very impressive. And usually Kansas fans like to say, oh, of course, the guy has a career night. I mean, that was a 7-2 guy that was shooting threes as well. Mm-hmm. That's a talented player. Baba Miller as well has tremendous upside. That's a tall and long Cincinnati team. When they went to that, I want to say it was not a 1-3-1. I think it was a 1-1-2-1. Would have been that. It was a unique zone, and they really were able to use their length to their advantage. Kansas didn't have any answers once things started spiraling late in the second half. So like we said, we'll talk to Henry about that. 4 o'clock hour, 2-minute drill. And the 5 o'clock hour, we'll talk Royals with David Lesky. They're in action this afternoon against Chicago Cubs. And then we'll wrap things up with the kicker. Back to this game tonight. Kansas and Houston. Bill Self enters this game at 40-0 on Big Monday. Mm-hmm. Houston also has not lost 3 games in a row in a long, long time.
No.
Something's got to give.
Yeah.
And whereas Houston, they can feel all right about their 2 losses, and I'm sure they're frustrated about blowing the game in Ames against Iowa State. Really, that game flipped on that kickball violation. That wasn't really a kickball. You go back to the numbers. I mean, Iowa State went on a tear after that and then beat Houston at the buzzer. Against Arizona, Arizona was in control for 75 to 80% of that game. Thought there was a moment in the second half where Houston's defense was really ramped up. You could tell that Arizona was struggling a little bit offensively, turning it over, and then toward the end, Arizona went on a run and never looked back. It's now do or die time for both of these teams if they want to win the Big 12 or put themselves in a favorable position. KU losing on Saturday, far sicker feeling in their stomach than I think Houston has, but also Houston has lost 2 in a row. And to lose 3 in a row, even to good teams, you can talk yourself into, hey, it's not that bad, but who do you have to beat to win it all? You have to beat good teams. Yeah. And Houston last year was so good at doing that. Everybody you match them up against, they beat. Didn't matter if it was Kansas, didn't matter if it was Arizona, didn't matter if it was Iowa State. The only team I want to say that got them, that I can recall of having this heavyweight showdown, was Tech, who also did it again this year, but Tech went in to Houston and knocked them off, and then Houston didn't lose much after that. I mean, they've lost 2 games now in their home arena since joining the Big 12. I mean, it's ridiculous numbers. Difference is tonight, they're at Allen Fieldhouse, facing a crowd, facing a team that is really pissed off, facing a team that understands they controlled their own destiny going into Saturday. Now that's not the case.
You'd like to think they're pissed off.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are some Kansas fans that are like, should this team have, should they have to be in a situation where they're mad? I think I like Kansas in this game just because of I think their history is more solid, and all these guys weren't there, but the Bill Self, that team, Big Monday, Allen Fieldhouse, I think that still has something because the coach is there, and we've just seen what happens sometimes in that building. It didn't happen Saturday, but this is the kind of night where it seems like they're going to come alive. I feel some Arizona vibe tonight in that game. That's just one of the things that seems to happen. Kelvin Sampson said after the game on Saturday, I don't mind losing. Now, I don't think he meant he didn't care if he lost.
Yeah.
But I think he meant that the fact they'd lost a couple in a row, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, we're afraid of it. They're not really. They don't feel like they need to. They're in panic mode because they lost a couple straight. So you're going to get a hell of an effort out of that team tonight. So I can't wait for this game to tip. It's going to be fantastic. At least it looks like it's going to be fantastic. Our friend Adam Sullivan, who does a lot of KU stuff, he posted some fun stats. And these are amazing things that going in tonight. Obviously, we know that KU 40-0 on Big Monday under Bill Self at Allen Fieldhouse, and I think they've won 44 straight in that situation. Houston win would make Kelvin Sampson the first coach to beat Bill Self twice at Allen Fieldhouse. Houston hasn't lost 3 straight since 2017. Kansas hasn't lost back-to-back games at Allen Fieldhouse since the 88-89 season. That was the first year of Roy Williams after they won the title and had probation. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's hanging in the air tonight. Much less 2 teams kind of which certainly have Final Four aspirations, have Big 12 championship aspirations. Playing in a one of the best, probably the best venue in college basketball. Kansas looking for some payback from a year ago. There's a million storylines tonight, even more so, I think, than there were 2 weeks ago when they played Arizona. This is going to be, was it last Monday or was it 2 Mondays?
2 Mondays ago.
2 Mondays ago.
Yep.
Right. I can't wait for this thing to tip. And you'll hear it right here on Sports Radio 10.
Yeah, we'll lead you right in the pregame. And I like how you bring up the building and the difference it makes. Saturday, look, you don't take anything away from what Cincinnati did. They went into Allen Fieldhouse. It was still packed. It was still loud from a time or two. But overall, it was not the same Allen Fieldhouse you'll see tonight. It's not the same Allen Fieldhouse you saw against Arizona, where it's red hot from the get-go. It doesn't matter if KU goes through a slump. They're always on the edge of their seat waiting to explode, whereas Saturday, if you watch the game on TV or you were there in person, few times did it kind of have that feel of, here we go, this is going to be tough to play in front of. And Cincinnati responded rather quickly. Anytime they did get to their feet, they would have that bucket. Whether Houston gets that bucket or not tonight, the crowd's going to be on their feet the majority of this game because they understand the only way you erase the memory of what happened on Saturday, the only way you put a better taste in your mouth than you got right now going into the game is if you beat Houston. Whether it's by 15 points or it's by 1 point, you win this game, you kind of forget about what happened. Not that you should completely block it out of your memory because, yeah, you'd be in a much better spot going into tonight if you just took care of business.
Yeah.
You did that, you're going into a tie for first place, I believe, and then being able to leapfrog Houston. And then you have Arizona on Saturday in Tucson, and you're talking about the 1 versus the 2 in the conference, which every KU fan would have taken after they lost to UCF in the first Big 12 game. And what's so funny about this team, Kurtis, is you look at their body of work in the Big 12. They've lost 4 games in the conference. One of them is to a ranked opponent, and it was on the road against Iowa State. Now, UCF was ranked at one point. I do not believe they were in the top 25 this morning. So you have West Virginia, UCF, Cincinnati, and Iowa State. So you have an unranked Cincinnati team that beats you at home, an unranked West Virginia team who beats you in Morgantown. At the time when they played, UCF was unranked. They then got ranked after beating Kansas. But it's such a strange record they have, where they have some impressive victories, beating Texas Tech in Lubbock, beating Arizona at home, beating Iowa State at home. This is one of those games, and Saturday. This is the biggest week that KU's had in a couple of years, let's be honest. Because if you lose tonight, I don't have much confidence you're winning on Saturday, because Arizona's looking for payback and looking to put a stranglehold on the top spot in the conference. All of a sudden, you could look up on Sunday morning and KU's lost 3 in a row and they're 20-9. And at this point, you're talking about being a 4 seed, maybe a 5 seed, and probably guaranteeing that you have double-digit losses going into the NCAA tournament. A win tonight puts more anticipation on Saturday, but also takes some pressure off your shoulders because you aren't going to be favored in Tucson against Arizona. You've all but guaranteed a first-day bye in the Big 12 tournament. That's important here, too. Last 2 years, KU's had to play on Wednesday in the Big 12 tournament. If you're a top 4 team in the Big 12, you don't play till Thursday. That is important this late in the season of just getting that extra day of rest. And KU hasn't come anywhere close to winning the Big 12 tournament back-to-back years. They lost to Arizona last year on Thursday because they had to play that overtime game against UCF. The year before that, they got smoked by Cincinnati without Hunter Dickinson or Kevin McCullough playing in that game. If you win tonight, you kind of change the momentum you got. We'll see what happens on Saturday against Arizona. You get your doors blown off like you did in Ames against Iowa State. Maybe we do have a different conversation about this team. But at least you can say, all right, you're probably only losing 5 games in the conference. You win in Tempe against Arizona State. You beat Kansas State at home. You'll have a first-day bye or a Wednesday bye in the Big 12 tournament. What matters tonight for me is what this team looks like with Darren Peterson on the floor. And we know for that Arizona game, all signs were positive until about 20 minutes before tip-off when we find out that Darren Peterson has the flu. He's not playing. Kansas rallies, knocks off Arizona, who was 23-0 at the time. However, since that game, you have seen a little bit of a shift. A little bit of a shift in how they've looked, how they've played. I think it's getting used to Darren Peterson out there. I really do. I was listening to Mick before we had our show, Kurtis, that he said for so much of this season, it was, well, how are they going to learn to play without Darren Peterson? How are they meshing? How are they getting into a rhythm without one of the most talented players we've seen at the college level in a long, long time? Now it becomes a focus of how do they learn to play with him. And I was one of those people that said, look, make sure he's healthy by the tournament. If he's healthy by the tournament and can play 40 minutes, that's all fine and dandy. What I was not acknowledging, and Bill Self even said this, we can't just throw him out there for 6 games and go, yeah, it's all good. He's healthy now. They can play. No, it is very clear they don't have that same in-sync look when he's out there as opposed to when he's not out there. And I'm not advocating for not playing him. They can't win a national championship without him. They need Darren Peterson at his best. I was watching the videos over the weekend of him in high school to now. He does not have the same jump. He does not have the same acceleration. It's very clear, it's very evident he's trying to play through something. And even Jay Billis said this morning, the easiest thing to do for him if he was using load management and whatever it would be called, he would just end it now. I'm hurt, I can't play, it's over, somebody's going to take me top 5. Him playing through it is about improving his stock, yes, but also that he wants to play through it. Whatever this cramping issue is, the hamstring, the flu, all of it combined together, it's going to need to hit a point here before Kansas City, the Big 12 tournament, where he is finishing every single game, unless it's a blowout like Saturday against Cincinnati. Because if he doesn't, this first half play, no show in the second half, then he plays a full game, then he doesn't play at all. The guys that are out there on the floor with him understand he's not some role player out there. This is your leading scorer. And if he's not consistently playing 30 to 35 minutes before the NCAA tournament, it ain't ever going to look normal. They're not going to be able to beat a Michigan or a Florida if they go up against them in the Sweet 16. Hell, it wouldn't surprise me with a tough matchup in the round of 32. If he plays and looks kind of like he did on Saturday and they are discombobulated by a 1-1-2-1 or a 1-3-1, they could lose that game. And that's why the focus tonight, the focus moving forward, win or lose, is he plays and he finishes the game. If he can't, that rhythm is never going to happen. It is never going to be a thing for Kansas, and that has to be frustrating because we've seen the ceiling for this group. But ceiling's a dangerous word when it comes to the talent of a team. Oh, if they do this, or they do this, or this guy plays well, they're going to make a run. There's also the other side of that coin. It might never happen. They might never get him at 100% for 6 games, which is what they need. Tonight, because he gets another opportunity to erase what happened on Saturday, erase the memory of Big Monday against Arizona because they won. If he goes out tonight, scores 25 to 30 points, and Kansas wins and he finishes the game, that would give me far more confidence than if he goes out there, looks like he did against BYU in the first half, no show in the second half, and Kansas wins by 15. I really feel that way. If Kansas wins by 3 and Darren Peterson scores 30 and finishes the game, I feel better about that team than if they roundhouse kick Houston by 20 and he doesn't play in the second half.
I would feel this much better because I don't think there's any game that Darren Peterson can play tonight that can really move the needle much on whether or not I think he's going to be there the rest of the year, and particularly in the Big 12 tournament, the NCAA tournament. We've just been here too many times.
We have.
And to me, it's going to take tonight, Saturday, the next week. He's going to have to play 3, 4, 5 games in a row.
Which he's never done.
Which he hasn't done before he can rid in any meaningful fashion that dread that Kansas and I'm sure their fans feel of, is he going to play tonight? It doesn't matter what he does tonight. On Saturday, the questions are going to be, is he going to play? Is he going to play? And it's going to be that way until we get there. So I think that it's you feel better about it, but not much better because there's this game board. We keep going around in this circle, and where we're at tonight, we've been at this spot before. And so I think it's all going to be figured out at the end. It's February 23rd. We haven't figured out what Darren Peterson's going to be in
27 games into the year.
In 2 weeks. One night's not going to move me very much in that regard. But I do think that's part of what happened on Saturday. And it sometimes it looks like, I think Bill Self did an amazing job of getting this team to play as well as they have because he's basically had to coach 2 teams. has to go into each game with a game plan for what do we do if he's there, what if we do if he's not, because he's too big of a figure to just have the same thing and Darren's either in or he isn't. You have to play differently when he's not there, and they've been fantastic at that. But they're not good enough as a team to have inconsistent play and to not know from one game to the next, because that's what causes problems on defense. You can find a way to be somewhat cohesive on offense, and Self is a master at that. But it's really hard to be a cohesive defensive unit when you don't know how long he's going to play or how when he's going to play. So that I think is what one of the things that hurt him on Saturday, and it makes that team not good enough to take a team lightly and take care of business. I think they probably did look at Houston on Monday and think, this is Cincinnati. Yeah, they won a couple of games, but it's Cincy. We're a huge favorite for a reason. And by the time they were able to, I think by the time they realized that wasn't going to be the case, they were in a dogfight that they weren't really equipped to win, because they don't have the overall talent to win a game, in which they get into that situation. So tonight is one of those nights where they seem to show up, and I expect that tonight. But there's almost nothing that can happen tonight that will make me feel any better about their fate at any point in March.
I would say the only thing that would make me feel far more negative about this team is if they go get curb stomped tonight. You go get curb stomped on Saturday, and you get smoked again. Well, any sort of momentum that you had after the Arizona win, things are different. Guys are meshing. Bryson Tiller looks good. Flory Badunga looks good. Elmarco Jackson, Jamari McDowell have some role off the bench. That goes away if Houston comes in and stomps you. And look, going into last week, going into the game in Ames on Big Monday, exactly 1 week ago tonight, they were the number 2 team in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a very good Houston team with a Hall of Famer as a head coach. And on the surface, if you're a fan of Washington and you were to watch the game tonight and KU loses by 10 to 15 points, you may say, it makes sense. I mean, Houston is a top 5 team. They've barely lost this year, and they've beaten KU in Allen Fieldhouse before. But I think here, it just changes everything about how far you think this team can go. And I hate to be over-dramatic about Saturday, because I saw people on Twitter say, hey, a KU team, even ones that have won the national championship, they have lost ugly games before late in the year. The 2022 team lost in Fort Worth to TCU by double digits, I want to say. If not far away from that, like 8 to 9 points. That was late in the year. And there was a meltdown, as all fan bases had. There was a meltdown of, told you they couldn't do it. Not good enough, not tough enough, can't defend, can't shoot the three well. They then got hot at the right time.
Yeah.
And so the 2008 team that won the national championship, they lost in Stillwater to Oklahoma State.
Bad loss on a Saturday night.
Yeah. And actually that year too, or maybe it was a couple years later.
They only lost 3 games in all year, but all 3 of them were like,
it was like, how'd that happen? I want to say it was Texas, K-State, and Oklahoma State.
Mm-hmm.
And they started a year 20-something and 0. The 2012 team that got to the national championship lost to that juggernaut of a Kentucky team. They lost to Davidson that year in Kansas City. Not a late season loss, but to me what's different about this past Saturday is what none of those games had. They weren't at home. It wasn't a 16 if they lost in Cincinnati like Iowa State did earlier this year. Okay, and Cincinnati kicked Iowa State's ass. That game was a blowout. And that kind of came out of nowhere. So they're capable of it. It changes when you're at home. And few Kansas teams have overcome something like that. And tonight, Saturday, the rest of the regular season, they're going to have to prove again why the team they were against Arizona, the team they were in the first half against BYU, that can happen again in the NCAA tournament. I mean, I know Kansas fans are spoiled of the last 3 years they haven't made it out of the first weekend, right? And one of those years they were a 1 seed, but after back-to-back years and how disappointing they were, it would be such a waste for a team that has become so beloved by the fan base. Melvin Council's this folklore hero. Trey White is beloved. Flory Badunga, Bryson Tiller. I mean, the starting 5, when they all play together and they look good, they're as likable as any Kansas team that I've watched. But tonight, the the fear of this game is not necessarily losing, it's how you lose. And it's crazy that 26, 27 games can be erased if they get smoked tonight. I'm not trying to be overdramatic, but you're 20-8 coming off of back-to-back blowout losses at home, and you have Arizona waiting for you, ready to rip your throat out for what happened in Lawrence 2 weeks ago. Right? So nothing would be trending in your direction. And oh, by the way, if you lose 3 in a row, you get a bounce back against Arizona State and K-State. Neither of those teams are going to be making it to, Thursday in the Big 12 tournament? Like, that's not giving you much confidence, whereas a win tonight with Darren Peterson playing, with Darren Peterson finishing, it doesn't make me go, okay, he's good. Back-to-back games, he's finished the game. We're in the clear. Because it can happen at any point. I hate to say this, but KU could be in the Final Four in the second half, and all of a sudden,
it is.
It happens.
Coach.
And where you brought it up, and it's a great point, we have too much of a body of work here. It's 27 games in. We can't be naive and say it's all fine and dandy, but that's why tonight is so important. Bill Self talked to the student body where they were camping out for the game. Never seen him do that. It's almost like a call to action of bring the energy tonight. We need this one badly. Because then you can kind of put Houston in the rearview mirror and try to go knock off Arizona and sweep them for the regular season on Saturday.
I think the game tonight is exactly what they needed, exactly what they wanted. To me, if I was a Kansas fan or a player or a coach, what do I want? I want immediate turnaround at home against a monster opponent. I think this is exactly what Kansas needs, and I think they'll meet the moment. I'll make an odd little prediction. By the way, we have some Chiefs news here in just a second. Kansas will have a 10-point lead tonight before Houston scores their 10th point. Mark it down.
Interesting.
Mark it down.
So you're going to have our field house on fire.
You're going to look up and you go, wow, it's 16-6. Whoa. That is going to happen.
Okay.
Now watch it. They'll get their doors blown off. But I'm telling you, this feels, my gut, and there's a lot there to feel. It tells me Kansas 10-point lead before Houston scores their 10th point. The Chiefs news. The Chiefs have released defensive lineman Michael Dana. It's weird. He was here the entire time. We never came to
and I've heard it called by national broadcasters. Yes. I've heard it both ways, too.
Yes. I didn't see an official release, but they did release a graphic of Mike Dana with the thank you. Thanks for everything. So I've seen other reports that assume so. I think that was a move we expected. We'll talk to Matt Derrick about this in about a half an hour. He'll count $2.16 in dead cap money in this year, but they'll save $9 million in salary and bonuses. So
we'll see.
The NFL offseason never stops.
Never does.
And
it's great. A whirlwind. It's almost immediate. The minute it all opens up, people are signing elsewhere. There's a lot of rumors going around, and
they have one of the greatest, the most perfectly designed products.
It's the best
in the history of sports because it's the king under any circumstances. And every time you look up, there's something going on. This is happening. Now it's the combine. They stagger things brilliantly, and it's every other team, every other sport's just like whatever you got left. We'll take the time.
The NFL knows how to make a spectacle out of everything. As you said, the draft combine, it's televised.
It's just brilliant.
And we've got Soren and Lebo going to watch guys run it in tight shorts.
In their underwear. And pump iron.
And as Andy Reid pointed out on Friday, although he won't be there, that's where a lot of stuff, the combine is generally obviously for college players, but a lot of NFL veteran stuff gets done there because coaches and GMs and agents are all there, and a lot of decisions made and re-signings and situations like that get worked out during this 3 or 4 day period where they're watching college players.
Yeah,
everything happens.
It's not quite the kickoff to the NFL offseason, but it's something that everybody pays attention to.
Yep.
And as Kyle said, our very own Soren Petro, Todd Lebo down there giving all kinds of coverage, and you look forward to hearing from them tomorrow. And we will talk more Chiefs with Matt Derrick, the Mike Dana news, as Kurtis just brought up. Also, the Travis Etienne news. That was over the weekend from Pete Sweeney. Speculation.
Some smoke.
Maybe making some money for him or creating some space for him. We'll definitely talk all things Chiefs with Matt coming up at 3 o'clock. To close out this hour, though, still a little bit of college basketball to get into. Want to get Curtis's thoughts on Mizzou's game against Arkansas. They are a bubble team, but really it's The way Arkansas has been playing, that is not that bad.
They
No.
weren't hurt by it at all.
Yeah, that is not a bad loss, and they'll get another opportunity against the Hogs later on in the year. And we'll real quickly touch on Matthew Driscoll's bunch going to Lubbock and losing to the Red Raiders. You're listening to the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Kurtis Seaboldt.
They Mizzou'd more than Mizzou can even Mizzou, right?
On the program, weekdays from 2 to 6 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, listen up. Basketball season is coming down the stretch run. It's the best time of the year, right? March Madness is right around the corner, whether it's the NBA or college basketball. It's all on Underdog. Fast breaks, buzzer beaters, blocks, all the stats you could want, all the players you could want. We've got KU and Houston tonight, right? Pick your favorite player, pick your favorite stat, go higher or lower. Underdog makes it really, really easy. I'll give you an example. Flory Badunga. Badunga's got 9.5 rebounds. I'm going higher than 9.5 rebounds on Badunga. In the NBA, Victor Wembanyama. Everybody loves him. I think 23.5's too much against the Pistons. So I'm going lower than 23.5 points on Victor Wembanyama. It's just that easy. Right now, get signed up at Underdog. You can score yourself $75 in bonus entries when you use promo code SEREN. That's right, use promo code SEREN. Score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code SOREN. Make entries, win money right now in Missouri. Get your entries right. You can win up to 5,000 times your cash. So what are you waiting for? Get signed up right now. Download that app. Use promo code SEREN. Score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. Big game tonight on Big Monday. The Hawks and the Cougars. You can be in on all the action on Underdog. Use that promo code SEREN. Underdog. Make plays. Win money.
Must be 18 plus and present in Missouri. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/plain get terms _DFS_.html for details. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-MY-RESET or visit www.ncpggambling.org.
When you've thrown over 4,000 innings like I have, you know joint pain isn't a maybe, it's a guarantee. For you, was it climbing ladders or too much heavy lifting? Hey, we're all in the same boat. But surgery, that was never my answer.
Baseball legend Roger Clemens knows there's a better way. That's QC Kinetics regenerative treatments that help your body heal itself. No scalpels, no fake fixes, just real relief.
What I love about QC Kinetics, these are the most respected medical pros in the country that specialize in non-surgical therapies to get you moving again.
Don't mask the pain, fix it. Call QC Kinetics now for a free consult.
It was cool.
Oh, good tune. The first song off the first Zeppelin album.
I can always count on you for something like that. And it is an excellent pick.
It's a John Bonham clinic.
And it makes you feel American.
Good times, bad times. I mean, it was basically the weekend of sports for
yes.
depending what your rooting interest was.
And it's good that game was on, early on Sunday. But for every local fan that either endured a 30-point loss, a loss as a bubble team, or a 16-point defeat at home at Allen Fieldhouse, you got to enjoy U.S. taking the gold.
We all the local three got to get together and root for red, white, and blue. That's pretty awesome.
There's nothing more disappointing, too, than sitting on a loss on a Saturday, whether it be college football or college basketball, and then you don't play to the next Saturday. Mm-hmm. Oh, man, it ruins everything. And now that football's over, you don't get the Chiefs, although this year didn't really do that often. Right. But to get you back in a better mood?
Often it was you have a situation, well, my college team,
didn't win.
Spent the bet, but at least I got the Chiefs tomorrow. No.
And even if they did
Not
win,
as much.
It was never a pretty win.
No.
It was never an enjoyable win.
You had to sweat it out the entire time.
Yeah. Well, we will talk about these other two local teams. We opened up with Kansas, who is in action tonight against the Houston Cougars. You can listen to pregame, game coverage, and postgame right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. As for the Missouri Tigers, they were taking on, let's call it, an angry Arkansas team that lost the game of the year. Mm-hmm. I'm going to call it that, in Tuscaloosa against Alabama, 117-115. Arkansas very well should have forced triple overtime. A missed putback dunk from point-blank range led to that not happening. So Arkansas, who's going to be a lock for the NCAA tournament, it's all about seeding now and also chasing down Florida for the top spot in the SEC. They were at home against Missouri, who, in the last couple of weeks, I want to get your thoughts on this, Curtis, I would say have had some pretty high highs and some pretty low lows. You go into College Station, beat A&M when you had to have it. Mm-hmm. That was a big signature win. You take down Vandy, though it got a little too close for comfort at the end, but a ranked win at home. You've also got the downside of losing to Texas, who was right there with you at home. And this game against Arkansas, I know you feel this way, but I want to get more of your thoughts. It was more of it can only help you. It can only boost you. Yep. You upset Arkansas, you are not on the bubble. You are not first four in. You are first four out. You have a spot in the NCAA tournament. And I thought they played pretty well until about 8 minutes left in the game. And Arkansas has that ability to do it, that when they got somebody on the ropes, you're not even able to hug anymore. It's usually just taking haymakers left and right, and you look up and they're up by 15 to 20 points.
And I kept waiting for that to happen, and there were a couple of moments in the second half. There was one, they had just given up a 3 to go down 7, and you could hear the crowd just going crazy. And then Missouri answered with the 3 on the other end to cut it to 4, and they kept doing that until at the end. I mean, Arkansas is just such a good offensive team. Mm-hmm. They've got multiple scoring threats. They've got maybe the best, as good a freshman in ACUF as there is in the country, and they had to contend with that, and they I think did as well as they could from an offensive standpoint in answering them on a day where you knew they were going to be keyed up to play. I looked at the stat after the game. Teams that shot at least 52% from the field, 44% from 3, and 88% from the line. That's what Arkansas was that day. This year, 48-1. Power conference teams are at home. Power conference teams are 15-0 with an average margin of 34 points. The closest game before Saturday was 23. Mizzou lost by 8. I mean, that they did. Now they allowed Arkansas to do all those 3, the free throw line. You can't do much except they got there a lot. But Arkansas did that to a lot of teams. Missouri played, I thought, pretty darn good defense in the first half for about 14 or 15 minutes. Then it all kind of came apart at the end of the first half and then just continued. But Arkansas is so good offensively that it's hard to really fault them too much. And on a day when they couldn't really stop the other team from scoring, they answered almost every time until at the very end when they just ran out of bullets. So I didn't think that was a bad loss. and neither did the bracketologies, because they were the same spot now that they were before that game. So, and the net rankings, they haven't moved. I don't think they've moved much in Ken Palm. I haven't looked. I can't remember where they were before that game. By the way, the one team that lost this year, I mentioned that the teams were 48-1 at home and those things. The one team that lost, UMKC.
I remember seeing that on the IOL. A team that has 4 wins, then yes.
They lost by 2 to North Dakota, so even when things were going well for the Roos, they couldn't put it together. Missouri right now, 52. And I don't know if they were where they were before that, but I think that they acquitted themselves fairly nicely. No one wants to lose, but that was about as least damaging a loss as you could possibly have.
And there's so many games across the season where you say, well, if they did this better, or they did this better, or this possession goes differently, you're on the winning side of it. To me, that was one of those games where you go, I mean, we could have defended better. It's also Arkansas, who has multiple NBA prospects. And you don't need to tell Kansas fans that, because they've eliminated Kansas in the tournament in the last 2 years, and I've always thought this about Arkansas. They play the regular season so perfectly to pull off an upset in the tournament because they have loads of talent, and they somehow end up as a 4 seed, a 5 seed, a 6 seed, or a 7 seed, or an 8 seed. Yeah. I mean, Kansas 3 years ago, when they were a 1 seed, the Grady Dick's team, Jalen Wilson, Bill Self didn't coach. That was Norm Roberts who had the takeover. That Arkansas team was an 8 or a 9, and they had 2 guys that went top 10 in the NBA draft. Nick Smith and Anthony Black. And then last year, Arkansas is at 10. They beat Kansas, then beat a 30-win St. John's team because they still have the length, the size, the speed, and the scoring ability. It's funny, you look at Arkansas and you go, they're not going to be a 1 seed. They're not a 2 seed. They're probably not going to be a 3 seed.
Right now, they're going into Saturday, they were a 5.
A 5.
In Lenardi.
Does any 4 seed want to draw them?
No. I don't think a 1 seed wants to draw them.
No.
And right now, in the bracket, it's matchups. It's a lot easier to predict seeds than necessarily who they're going to play in that seed. So the fact that they've got 4, or they've got Nebraska as the 4 in that region, Lenardi does. Who knows? But if it is 4, if you're Nebraska, do you want to, after tangling with Stephen F. Austin and getting a win, you want to have that team come in?
No. And also, you look at how Nebraska's built, and Nebraska's been awesome to watch this year. Fred Hoiberg is so easy to root for. You look at the differences in Nebraska's size, speed, ball movement, rhythm, and then you got Arkansas, who, doesn't care too much about defense. But my goodness, when they get scoring, I mean, they're getting looks at will. And that's where Missouri, I thought, really gave their B-plus performance. The reason I wouldn't give it an A- because they didn't win. And defensively, I can't give it higher than a B. Yeah. But offensively, they were going blow for blow for a little bit there. And the only frustrating part, if you're a Missouri fan, is time is running out to secure a spot. But I also think with how their schedule is stacked up, take care of business against who you need to take care of. Right? Go in there and beat the teams below you. Get closer and closer to 20 wins. Win 1 game in Nashville. That's, to me...
2-2.
Yeah.
One win against a team that's around your
where you are, and I think even if they go out in the first round, 2-2 might get them there, but 2-2 and a win to feel more secure on Selection Sunday.
You're probably no worse than a 10. You're not in a first 4 game.
No,
you're a 10 with a shot at getting to a 9, depending on what everyone else does. But I'd just soon take the 10. I don't want to be the 9 and have to play 1 in the second game. I'll take that 10 seed and get me on the bottom half of the bracket. I think that's what that does. Yeah, but that puts you with the 7. Mm-hmm. So that puts you on the bottom.
And there's some data to back it up that when you have that first 4 game and you win, you are better equipped to beat the next team, the 7 seed or the 8 seed, because
if they win.
Yeah, if you got that 1 game under your belt. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes you're out of gas and you're unable to beat that team. With Missouri, though, and real quickly before we hit break and come back and wrap up the first hour with some K-State talk, I remember when we had Gabe DeArmond on, one of the last times I filled in. It was right before conference play. And I don't know if you remember this, but he had kind of alluded to, I don't see where this team gets its wins. Yeah. I mean, they were limping into conference play.
Neither did I.
I mean, it was coming off of the thrashing at the hands of Illinois, who is a 2 seed. They did lose to UCLA. in L.A. over the weekend in a thrilling game, overtime buzzer beater. But still, Illinois is a 2 or a 3, and they're incredibly good, and they score as good as anybody in the country. And yeah, that was an ugly loss for Missouri. Sometimes, though, that non-con schedule is so far removed that it doesn't matter anymore. And I always think that Missouri did a really good job as soon as SEC play started to get back up on the horse. That could have been a situation where they limped, got thumped by Florida, thumped by Kentucky, and started 0-4, and then you're done.
Well, the thing, I don't think we thought at the time, but we knew they'd be getting back Jaden Stone and Trent Pierce, or getting one and getting back the other. I don't think we could expect that they'd be as good as they've been, particularly Stone. It changes their team offensively. If they're still sitting out, this team's got 3 wins in the conference. But they now have on any given night a couple of guys who can get you 20, and it might be Mitchell and Pierce as it was on Saturday. It might be Mitchell and Stone. It might be Barrett and Stone. You can have a couple of guys. They've got more than just one. More than just, hey, let's get Mark Mitchell to the pounding into the paint and trying to get to the line or trying to get layups, and maybe you get a 3 out of somebody else. They've got more ways they can score now. So that's why I think that's been huge, and I don't think we thought they would improve that much because of those 2 players. But when you get to this point, you look back and it's been the addition of those 2 guys that made this team completely different, and the improvement and the insertion of T.O. Barrett as the primary point guard, which gives Anthony Robinson a little less pressure and allows him to kind of be able to go on the court and just do what he can do best. He isn't required to run the offense, which he is not good at doing. So, but he has some skills, and he has some abilities, and now he can do that without having to worry about whether he's running the offense or not. And when they're running the offense through Barrett and they're moving the ball around and getting guys different shots, they can score with a lot of teams. It's just they have to continue to do that and not get into hero ball and not get into guys wanting to do one-on-one stuff and are just jacking up threes that are, guys who shoot threes should be guys who can hit threes. And occasionally they get a little out of every once in a while you're like, all right, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what this is. What's happening? And they got to avoid doing that. But they've got the tools to do it, though, I think.
A big test tomorrow night. They'll be at home against Tennessee, and a ranked win there can do wonders for where they're going to be placed in Joe Lunardi's next bracketology. As Kurtis said, not much change so far. Just that loss to Arkansas didn't damage them really at all. Now they've got an opportunity to get back up on the horse and boost their chances with a win against Tennessee tomorrow night. We'll take another break here. When we come back, we'll wrap up hour number 1 with some K-State talk. Wrapping up hour number 1 of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, filling in for Soren Petro. He and Todd Lebo are en route for the NFL Draft Combine. They'll be back on air tomorrow, and they'll have tons of stuff from there. And we are about to start talking some NFL with Matt Derrick, get his thoughts on the Chiefs. The Mike Danna news. Chiefs are moving on from him, get his thoughts on the Draft Combine, and also on a potential running back that might be a fit for Kansas City. We did want to close off this first hour with some K-State talk. They fall in Lubbock to the Red Raiders, 100-72. As we had talked a little bit about in the first 15 minutes at times, and we see it so often after an emotional win where a coach is fired, and you got that juice, you got that energy to go and play for the interim, who is Matthew Driscoll, the water's going to find its level. It happens quite a lot. I know for here locally, when I want to say Charlie Weiss was fired, and it was Clint Bowen that stepped in. You saw a Kansas team played with more energy, had a couple upset wins, nearly knocked off a top 5 TCU team. Then what happened? Water found its level, and we all knew that KU team was terrible, and they lost every other game the rest of the way by 30+, at times 40+. K-State's not that bad in terms of basketball form because they have some talented players. It's still an expensive roster, but what I saw on Saturday is what the game against Baylor really didn't showcase all that much. It's that it is by far and away the worst team in the conference defensively. They can't stop anybody.
No.
And against Baylor, I watched that game start to finish. That was not them walling up Baylor. Baylor has 2 guys that are incredibly talented and have bright NBA futures ahead of them, and Yesufu and Carter, I believe, is the other kid. They were taking the most low percentage shots I've ever seen a team take in a game against an inferior opponent. I know it's a very detailed description here, but the amount of 2-point jumpers right inside the 3-point line, contested 2-point jumpers, fadeaway hooks, it made no sense what Baylor was doing. And quite frankly, nothing Scott Drew's bunch has done this year has led me to believe they know what they're doing. It's a very different Baylor team than we're accustomed to seeing. They've always had talent. They got great guard play. They win a lot of games. That ain't happening this year. And for K-State, they did such a great job of playing for Matthew Driscoll in that game. They had the energy, the offensive firepower of P.J. Haggerty and Nate Johnson, 30-plus point games. Then they face a Texas Tech team that was ready to knock somebody out because of the loss in Tempe, a bad one to Arizona State. You lose your star for the year. As you said, Kurtis, I don't care what the line is.
Yeah.
I'm taking Texas Tech.
The other thing was from the game against Baylor, 57% from the field, 47% from 3, 82% from the line. Anyone who thought that Kansas State was going to duplicate that
No.
at Tech.
Vegas tells you. More often than not, Vegas tells you.
They played out of their mind in a highly emotional game on their home court. As I said earlier, you mentioned it just again. Tech minus the points was the easiest bet I think you would have had all week.
55% from the field, 46% from 3, 13 to 28. You brought up those stats about Arkansas. This was 10 times better for Texas Tech.
Yeah.
I don't care if K-State was on the A game. They weren't beating Tech. Matt Derrick talking Chiefs next.
All right, before Saturday, KU's largest home loss as a ranked team to an unranked team was 15. To whom? Brought to you by La Feta Delicatessen. He has a name that echoes throughout Chiefs history. He also has a name that does not.
Matt.
He's Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest on the program.
Hour number 2 of the program begins with Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com. Even though the season has wrapped up, we know the NFL offseason can get started at any point. Get hot. The stove gets hot. We have the NFL Draft Combine, which Seren Petro and Todd Lebo are en route to. And, of course, we have the NFL Draft, which is coming up in April. So let's talk about all those things with Matt Derrick. Matt, how are we doing this afternoon?
Not too bad, Jack. I mean, it's not very often that we get to talk, and it's not like 2 a.m. in the morning.
Yes.
Or anything crazy like that, or Pat Strassman and Wichita's involved. So this is nice.
This is so much better. Not that you bring great stuff all the time, but I know that for both of us, when that phone rings at 12:30 or 1, and especially this year, Matt, when most of those were after losses, and we had to recap what was going on, it wasn't too fun. And now this is much more optimistic. We get to talk about the stuff on the horizon. We get to talk about the NFL Draft, the Draft Combine, potential free agent fits. But we have to start with Mike Dana, as the Chiefs announced via a Twitter post, an Instagram post, that they are releasing him. Is that something that was expected, or was this a little bit more of a surprise to you?
Yeah, this was on the kind of realm of kind of fairly likely moves for me. It wasn't a slam dunk that the Chiefs would walk away from Mike Dana, but it seemed pretty likely. You know, he's not a typical edge rusher. He's more of you would say, an edge defender. Plays a lot of the run. I mean, he's a nice support piece to have. He was just going to cost you almost $2 million in 2026 against the cap, and you can save $9 million by walking away. And he's going to be 29, so I think you're already starting to see the effects of age on his career. So he's not maybe the same guy he was a couple of years ago. He's been a really nice piece for the Chiefs, good locker room presence. There's nothing bad anybody's going to say anything about Mike Dana. He's the kind of player you'd love to have. It's just that you can't have him at that price point. So, this almost gets the Chiefs under the cap and gets them compliant for the beginning of the new league year. They'll still need another move to make. There's some options out there, but, this was a move that I expected. I don't know. Like I said, it wasn't necessarily a slam dunk, but it just made a lot of sense at this point for the team to part ways with Mike.
With so many moves that they have to make and so many areas they have to address, how big a factor was it that he was here for 6 years and we never figured out what his last name was?
Well, there's a couple of those. I mean, you know what? What was it, Kurtis? We found out kind of like in, what was it, year 9 for Travis Kelce, that maybe his name was Kels all along, and Andy Reid was right.
Well, Tyler Beatty, he was Tyler Beatty at Mizzou all 4 years, and suddenly he was Tyler Bidet. Somehow, I was like, you could have told us this.
And I don't know if you remember, I'm still not entirely sure that we're spelling Isaiah Pacheco's first name right.
Or if it's Pacheco.
Pacheco, as Andy likes to call him.
Exactly.
Well, Matt, does this show that they've got increased confidence in, I don't know, someone like Omar Norman-Lott, someone like Felix Enrique-Uzama, who didn't play all of last year? I mean, Mike Dana was not an enforcer up front, but he provided depth, and it was a defensive line last year that was just not good enough. They didn't get enough pressures, didn't get home to the quarterback all that often, and now you don't have Dana. Somebody else has to step up. And yes, we know they might go edge rusher with their first pick in the first round, but this is more about depth. Who's going to be the next guy up to replace that hole that Dan is leaving?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, because I'm not sure that they've got the answer to that. I fully expected, for 2026 that the Chiefs were probably going to have 4 or 5 new faces on this team, on the defensive line. And you're going to have Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, Ashton Gelati. You will have Omar Norman-Lott at some point. There's no guarantee that with that ACL that he'll be ready week 1, but you're hoping that he's going to be ready for the beginning of the season. And then after that, it gets a little muddled. I mean, it's you really don't know for sure. And yes, Felix Anudike-Uzama could be a piece, but at this point, he's only really shown you that he's kind of a rotational piece at this point in his career. I don't expect a lot of other guys to be back, like Charles Omenihu and some other veterans. I mean, the Chiefs are going to try and get younger, faster, more affordable, and and that's where Mike Dana kind of fit in. I mean, he just wasn't very affordable anymore. And so, I think there's going to be some more changes, and maybe there's been a young guy that's been around, on the practice squad. Maybe it's a guy that's been injured. Janarius Robinson was out all of last year. I don't know if the Chiefs were impressed enough in training camp to think that he's a solution, but that's a guy that's around. Ethan Downs was kind of interesting. I mean, he looked like kind of maybe a poor man's Mike Dana, obvious, kind of to me in his time here as maybe a guy who could just really affordably be a guy that plays the run and, has kind of that high-end motor. Maybe doesn't have the skill set, obviously, of a George Karlaftis or an Ashton Gelati, but scores well on the tries hard and can play the run and do some of those dirty work things that you occasionally need on first and second downs. So, and we'll see. I mean, and again, like you mentioned, I mean, the Chiefs could address defensive line in the draft. They could address it in free agency. They could address it a couple of times in the draft, depending on what they do and how many picks they're able to acquire with maybe navigating the board a little bit and even flipping some of the talent that they have for more picks.
You both touched on FAU and his possibilities, I guess. Aaron Schatz of ESPN, who does great work for them, he did a story on Friday. It was one player for each team that could use a change of scenery, and his player for the Chiefs was Felix Anudike-Uzomah, and he said that he's no higher than fourth on the depth chart, and going elsewhere might allow him to find the potential. But the problem I have with that analysis is that it isn't like he's been the victim of a numbers game. If he had potential and had, he would have seen the field at some point over the past couple of seasons. Is there any real upside to him? How much better do you think he can be? Because I think the fact that they've gone to back-to-back Super Bowls or went to three straight Super Bowls and the success they've had has really kind of glossed over the fact that they've gotten next to nothing out of a first-round pick.
Yeah, and and Felix coming into the league, you knew he was kind of a tweener in that he wasn't the size of a typical defensive end, especially the ones that Spags likes to have and Joe Cohen likes to have. Not your prototypical 4-3 defensive end. But, the Chiefs thought, hey, wait a minute, this guy's really young because he was 21 when they drafted him. He was a late bloomer. They thought, what, if he could put 10 or 15 more pounds on that frame and be maybe more like 270 and play at that size, that he could be kind of what they wanted. And I just don't know if we really ever saw that kind of progress, that he could put on the weight and still kind of have the explosion that he had. We never really saw those two feats and kind of traits together. So what is Felix? Is he a 3-4 linebacker edge rusher? I'm not sure he's that either. I mean, you kind of want those guys to have a little bit more of a well-rounded skill set, and Felix still looks like a kind of an on-the-ball kind of player, more along the line of scrimmage. But his skill set seems to kind of suggest that he's probably a guy that you would line up outside, way outside, like a wide 9 kind of the position. And so for the Chiefs, I think he is really a niche kind of rotational piece. There might be some other defenses that he's a better fit for. And I've been saying what Aaron said for over a year now. I mean, I thought the same thing last year. If he'd stayed healthy, I think the best thing that could have happened for him was to have had a good training camp, and maybe the Chiefs could trade him then. I still think that a change of scenery would do him well, just because I think it's been a tough place here in his hometown to try and kind of prove himself. I think that's always been kind of a tough thing for him. The struggles that he's had has not made it easy. So I do think a change of scenery would be good for him.
A lot of the focus on the offense in this offseason is whether or not Andy Reid can break old habits and step out of his comfort zone and do things differently than he has. But I think maybe that applies to the defense in at least one aspect. Steve Spagnuolo has been fantastic. He's probably going to the Hall of Fame as a defensive coordinator. But do they put a little too much into the edge rushers that fit the Spags mold, the measurables of edge rushers? Because But they haven't gotten guys who can hit the quarterback, getting the quarterback. Going by that metric, they have not found the guys they have that have fit that physical metric can't get to the quarterback. With two guys at high in Bailey and Bain who also don't really fit those measurables, is it time to say, enough with the measurables, can this guy get to the quarterback?
Yeah, and that's the weird thing. I mean, getting to the quarterback is great if you can do it, but it's kind of. I'm going back. I don't know if Kurtis, you remember Joe versus the Volcano or ever saw that.
I did not.
There's a line in there from the great Dan Hedaya that I just love. They repeat throughout the entire movie, which is that I know he can do the job, but can he get the job? And that's the problem for undersized pass rushers with Steve Spagnuolo, is that Joshua Uche, you know he could do the job, but can he get on the field? And he could the other team he plays for, but just doesn't fit in with what Spags and Joe Cohen want to do. And to your point, does that mean that it's time to do things differently or look at some players with different skill sets? And I think it's incredibly appropriate this year to be talking about that, because there are some players at the top of this draft that are of the same ilk, same size, kind of what some of these 3-4 type linebackers that have had success on some 4-3 teams. But Josh Uche, I think, has had more success in 3-4 schemes, and maybe that's going to be true of a guy like a David Bailey, who's a little bit undersized compared to most DNs, and certainly, when you compare them to like a George Karlaftis or an Ashton Gelati, and kind of what the Chiefs kind of feel is the kind of maybe their bread and butter as far as size for defensive ends. Is it a sign that things aren't working? I mean, maybe so, because it's been 2 years now that the Chiefs pass rush has not been getting there and hasn't been getting the production that they got before. Is that just the timing with Chris Jones kind of entering another phase of his career and maybe not the demonstrative force that he once was? He's still a force, but maybe not the dominating force that he was. Has it been injuries? Has it been a lot of these things put together? Maybe so. At some point, I think you make your point, Kurtis, which is that talent should be able to get on the field and make plays. And if there's guys that can help you that just aren't getting on the field, maybe you just need to put them on the field and see what they can do.
Or maybe not tailor your defense too much to the guy you want and tailor it to the guys you have. And the guy I'm thinking of right off the bat was Steve Spagnuolo has stood there and watched Nick Bonito wreck his offense 4 times in the last 2 seasons. At 6'3", 240, he's not a Spags guy. But do you get the idea? I mean, they wouldn't have drafted him, and they obviously didn't. But I think he's shown that if given the right opportunity, he can wreck the other team. Nick Bonito strikes me as a guy that if he was available to the Chiefs and they were looking for an edge rusher, they wouldn't have picked him.
And you know what? I mean, Von Miller before him was kind of the same way. I mean, again, these are guys that the Chiefs just probably wouldn't have considered because they're more, 6'2", 6'3", 245, 250 kind of guys. And even bringing in Josh Uche was kind of an experiment, and they got burned on it. I mean, Brett Veach kind of got burned. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, this is an interesting year because some of the best pass rushers in this year's class are undersized for at least what the Chiefs normally want, and it's a huge need for them. So, hey, if Ruben Bain's not there at the top of the draft, I don't know what they're going to do.
Talking with Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com. Matt, I want to get your thoughts on what Pete Sweeney, who we've had on the show before, put out there about Travis Etienne, the Chiefs having some interest, and we know that really they should be looking at all outlets for a running back, whether that be through the draft or that be through free agency. I want to get your thoughts on the best possible fit, and we know that the names that are thrown out there involve Jeremiah Love, who might be there when the Chiefs are drafting at 9. We've also heard Breece Hall because of his local connections and also going back to the trade deadline. And now Travis Etienne. If you were the one making the pick, who does fit this Chiefs offense the best of those 3?
Oh, man, it's a really good question. I feel like you go with the production, and you'd have to say Breece Hall. But I think that the Chiefs are also going to factor in cost into it. And if Breece Hall becomes the more expensive of the group and Travis Etienne is cheaper, I think they're probably going to go with the cheaper option. I think those are, and that's why maybe there's going to be another name that pops into it. Maybe it's a Tyler Algier that comes into the equation. I know that the Chiefs are looking at and considering any and all options at that running back spot. I mean, they'll look at anybody, but cost may come down to. It's, even though we know they were interested in Breece Hall, and I do think Breece Hall would be a great fit in this offense. I just don't know if they're going to want to go. I mean, if Breece Hall ends up being a $10, $12 million player, I mean, Kenneth Walker I think would be a great fit too, but he might end up being a $10, $12 million player. Etienne, because he is a little bit older, I think he's going to be 28 this year. The other guys are like 24, 25. That could be a factor that makes him a little bit more affordable. Like I said, maybe when you look at production and you go on down the list and then you get to like the Tyler Algiers of the world, just God forbid that the Chiefs like go down the J.K. Dobbins rabbit hole of injuries. But, you know, there are a lot of guys. I think there's a half dozen running backs that absolutely in free agency could help the Chiefs and really fit in with what they want to do. It's just, I think, how expensive and how much are they going to want to pay?
I remember watching that Monday night game, and there were about half a dozen moments where I went, oh, that would look nice. They were playing in Jacksonville. Chiefs don't have a guy who can do that. So, I mean, he'd fit. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, it was excellent in the passing game for Jacksonville. We know what he can do in the backfield as well. Matt, because of the Rashee Rice news last week, do they need to consider wide receiver top 10? I know they're going to probably wait and see how it all plays out, but there are some good top 10 options. I know edge rusher is a popular pick. I know Jeremiah Love is a lot of people's popular pick. But when it comes to wide receiver, do they need to invest there, or is it something they can just figure out in day 2 or day 3?
Yeah, that I think is going to be another tough one because the wide receiver group this year, especially at the top, it just seems like there's so many questions and so many concerns about them. And I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, the wide receiver should probably be a position that the Chiefs consider at 9. It's just I don't know if when you take in the injury history and you take in all those factors, is there a receiver that's actually going to be considered one of those, maybe, and this year we talk about maybe less. Maybe there's only 12 first-round caliber players. Maybe there's a receiver that's not one of them. And if that's the case, I mean, if you've got 12 first-round grades and a receiver is not one of the 12, you can't take a receiver at number 9. I mean, that's just giving away value. Now, if the Chiefs, if there's somebody the Chiefs really love, and that's somebody that does have a first-round grade, you go for it. But I just look at everybody that's at the top of the wide receiver draft, and it just seems like there's so many questions with every single one of them that they seem like a risk to be taking at 9, and especially for a team that's got multiple needs. Again, if I'm Brett Veach, I'm taking a wide receiver every single year, not necessarily in the first round, but certainly, probably at least by early on day 4, because you want to continue to make sure that Patrick Mahomes has got weapons, and these guys you are going to go through every 4 years. I mean, you're going to rotate them, so you almost need to be taking a wide receiver every single year. It doesn't have to be the first round, and I'm sure they'll look later in the draft too, and there might be some really sneaky good talent later in the draft. Not that you're waiting until the late on day 3, which right now the Chiefs don't have any late day 3 picks, so you're going to probably have to take somebody early, at least by the 5th round. But I don't know. I'm pretty sketchy on the top of the draft at wide receiver, but I think there might be better value later on.
Last couple questions for you, Matt. Really appreciate your time. Travis Kelce has also been in the news, and last time that I was filling in for Seren, Matt, we had the discussion about Kelce and really multiple people on that day of where are you leaning? Is he coming back? Is he going to call it quits? And everybody I talked to said, I'm leaning toward that was it. He is going to retire in the offseason. He'll let the Chiefs know by early March, and now we're approaching that date. And I don't know, Matt, the last couple of times it's been in the news, it kind of sounds like he's leaning toward coming back. Should I buy into that, or are you going to stay with your opinion from a couple months ago of it probably was it for him in the 2025-2026 season?
We're kind of getting to what I wondered if it would happen with Travis this offseason, which is that, I mean, there was certainly, you looked at it after a couple of the games this year, some of the tough losses, you could see on the look of Travis's face that it was like he was acknowledging that this was his last year. He was thinking about this being his last year and just couldn't believe that this year was going the way that it was, and he was going out this way. And I mean, he certainly, I thought, kind of gave the vibe of a guy who was really just disappointed that this was the end of it at the end of the season. But behind the scenes, you were hearing that there was some optimism that the Chiefs thought he might be back and would reconsider it. And, that's the thing, is that with Travis, I think the last few years at the end of the season, I think he's probably been thinking about whether this was going to be it or not. And it just takes maybe a couple of weeks of being away from the guys before he realizes that, hey, this is what he does, this is who he is, this is what he wants to keep doing until the wheels fall off. And I don't know. I'm not sure that by his definition or anybody's definition that the wheels have fallen off. He's still a really good tight end. Is he a 1,400-yard guy? No. Is he still arguably maybe one of the top 5 tight ends in the league? The numbers would say yeah. So I think if he wants to come back, I think you have to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I'm thinking more and more that he is coming back. I've been a pendulum on this thing, Jack. I've been going back and forth because I think it's just been such mixed signals. And I'm still assuming that sometime between tomorrow, after Brett Veach talks to us and goes on with his life and day, and the beginning of the new league year, March 11th, I think we're going to hear from Travis. We'll hear it. And I think the longer it goes on, the more likely he's coming back.
Hey, you don't need to feel bad about going back and forth on this, because I'm pretty sure everybody else has done the exact same thing. Every time you think he's made a decision, something else changes that. Now, speaking of coming back, does it make any sense for the Chiefs to pursue Tyreek Hill in free agency, even if he's not ready to go by week 1?
I mean, does it make sense? Would it make sense when he's healthy? Sure. Right now, no. I mean, there's no reason to have Tyreek Hill rehabbing on your dime. Let him go get his LCL surgery, let him get healthy, and then see where he's at. I mean, right now you just don't know. So I don't think it makes any sense right now. I'm not sure it's going to make any sense once he's done. I mean, certainly, hey, kick the tires. I think that's what you have to do, your due diligence, if you're interested in him coming back, if he's interested in coming back. But at the same time, I mean, I think there's going to be some people in the organization that will not necessarily have fond memories of how things went back into the day. And I think the Chiefs are past reunions. I mean, I think that they've got to realize that the guys who were the mainstays of this team and this offense, and if you want to say the glory days of 17, 18, 19, they're over. I mean, that was too long ago. So Tyreek does not fit with the philosophy of getting younger, cheaper, and faster. And, we haven't heard it. I've been kind of thinking of it, as and there's a little bit of it. People kind of talking about, hey, you're now getting to the second era of Patrick Mahomes. It's going to be a whole new group. If he goes back and wins another Super Bowl or 2 or more than that, he's going to do it with a different group of folks. And I think that applies especially to Tyreek. I just don't know if there's a place for him. Is he still a good football player? I'm not going to know until he gets back onto the field. But with that injury and his age, all those factors, I would have some serious concerns that I wouldn't sign him until I see him on a football field after his surgery and after he's recovered.
All right. Well, good stuff, Matt. As always, you enjoy watching the NFL Draft Combine, and we'll talk to you next time.
Sounds great, Jack. Take care, everybody.
There he goes. That's Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com giving us his thoughts on the NFL Draft, who the Chiefs might take. Tyreek Hill there. I know some people out there want to see a reunion, also want to see Travis Kelce come back for just one more year. And if you missed any part of that interview, you can always check it out on the podcast page after the show. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more KU basketball with Henry Greenstein, who covers KU hoops. They've got a big one tonight against the Houston Cougars. You can listen to the Kansas Nation pregame show at 6 o'clock, and then you have Kansas pregame at 6:30, and the Jayhawks and Cougars will tip off at 8 p.m. sharp. Keep it locked in to Sports Radio 810 WHB. So we'll talk some KU hoops next on the program.
The program with Soren Petro.
They're not that much dumber than I am, but they're sure as a Dickens not that much smarter than I am either.
Weekdays from 2 to 6 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Listen, Joslin's Jewelry's been in business for almost 50 years for really, it comes down to one simple thing. Look, if the piece of jewelry isn't beautiful enough for Gary to put it on his own wife's finger, then he's not going to have it in the store. If he wouldn't put the earrings in her ears, if he wouldn't put the bracelet on her wrist, then he won't have it in his store. Only the very best diamonds are good enough for Gary Joslin. Scintillating diamonds are all that's acceptable for Gary Joslin. Listen, Joslin's Jewelry has been voted the #1 jewelry store in Kansas City. Why would you go anywhere else? Gary's going to give you the most beautiful jewelry at the fairest prices. He said it for years. He doesn't want your money. He wants your business. What that means is he wants you to come in time and time again. He wants you to be happy with the purchase, happy with the experience. That's why they go out of their way. First of all, they genuinely love what they do. That comes with having a passion for the jewelry. They love jewelry, and they love selling it to people and putting smiles on people's faces. I know I've been going to Joslin's Jewelry for 20 years. I know even my girls now go to Joslin's Jewelry. It's one of the best experiences I've had with as a father with my daughters, was taking them in to look for a present for mom. The staff was unbelievably patient. They showed, I think, everything in the store to my daughters. My daughters had a great time. Listen, great people selling great jewelry at the fairest prices. That's what you get. So what are you waiting for? Get to the southeast corner of 95th and Antioch, just about a mile north of 435, right there on Antioch. Or you can find them online at joslinsjewelry.com. Gary Joslin is your hometown jeweler. Go see him today if you have any needs when it comes to jewelry. He's right there at 95th and Antioch. Joslin's Jewelry, the gold standard in fine jewelry.
This is Kevin Harlan, and I'm here with Rob Seid of Rob Seid Ford. Fresh off a record-breaking year and a successful run at Ford's 2025 Top Volume Award. Rob, how did you do it?
Kevin, it's simple. We pulled out all the stops on price, on trade values, on inventory, and made sure our customers got an experience they couldn't find anywhere else.
Well, the race isn't over. 2026 is here, and you're back in the chase again.
That's right, and we're going even harder this year. More inventory, more aggressive trade-in values, and a buying experience other dealers just can't match.
Well, you're not just talking, you've got the receipts. Kansas City's only top-rated Ford dealer on Google, 4.8 stars with nearly 3,000 reviews. Voted best car dealership in Kansas City by KC Magazine.
The recognition matters, but what actually matters is how you feel when you call or visit Rob Seid Ford.
Inventory, value, transparency, and no pressure. That's why people keep coming back.
Come see us at 135th and State Line or visit us online at ROBSI.
Big showdown in Lawrence a couple hours from now. The Kansas Jayhawks looking to bounce back from their loss to Cincinnati against the Houston Cougars, who are trying to avoid a 3-game losing streak. Bill Self, 40-0 on Big Monday at home.
Oh.
Kansas is not usually, they're perfect in spots like this.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I need to knock on wood, because I'm sure a lot of people have said, well, they're going to win tonight, and then they do. Hell, they found out Darren Peterson was not available 15 to 20 minutes, it seemed like, before their tip against Arizona, and they still handed the Wildcats their first loss of the season. Now, this even seems to be a bigger spot for them, because if they want to keep pace with the top dog in Arizona, who they've got on Saturday, they got to win tonight.
And they were a 1.5-point dog,
and they're usually good in those spots as well.
I love KU even more on that one.
Yeah, I know your confidence
in
that one.
That's a Missouri fan saying that.
Yeah, so that tells you anything. All three of us are pretty confident in what the Jayhawks have in store. We'll see how confident that Henry Greenstein is. He's covering KU for KUSports.com. Henry, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Yep, it's my pleasure. And not only is Bill Self 40-0 on Big Monday, KU hasn't lost back-to-back home games in Allen Fieldhouse since 1989. So a lot of streaks on the line tonight.
Absolutely. It is such a big spot for them. And I don't know, Henry, is this where you throw out the records, you throw out the point spread, and you look at what Kansas is coming off of? You look at what happened last year against Houston in this same building, and it's just this perfect storm. Or do we also need to acknowledge it's kind of that perfect storm for Houston as well, where they lose a tight one to Iowa State, they lose a tight one to Zona, and now in their third opportunity against a top 10 opponent, they can get it done. Who has the more perfect storm going into this one?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the big question, especially coming off a Saturday-Monday turnaround where you don't have as much time to prepare for your opponent. It's going to be a sheer willpower for both these teams, I think. You know, I think it's probably good for KU in terms of the mental side of things that they only have one player who was on the floor for that calamity against Houston last year in Allen Fieldhouse, because that won't necessarily be weighing on anyone's minds. And actually, KU's been pretty good at closing out games this season. The only one where they really didn't do it well was at UCF. But especially at Allen Fieldhouse, I mean, Bill Self has built such a reputation for being good when the going gets tough, that's what made last year's thing so shocking. And, of course, they went on and lost a game to Baylor where they had a 21-point lead, like, right after that. This year's team has been much more, has much more frequently risen to the moment. And I think they have a chance to do that again tonight. You know, the Arizona game, they were even more of an underdog than they are now. But you know, Houston presents its own set of challenges. You know, as tough and as big as Arizona was on the boards and in the paint, you know a Houston team is going to be like that too. Now, granted, Houston this year is a little different from what we've seen in years past. You know, the team that went to the title game last year did that on the backs of extensive experience. Well, this year, Kelvin's had to work his way through some growing pains with having, you know, two freshmen and a sixth-man. Two freshmen in the starting lineup and a sixth man who's also a freshman. It's probably not the way he would prefer to do things, but when you got players as good as Kingston Flemings and Kristen Eck and Isaiah Harwell, that's how it's got to go. But, you know, this Houston team isn't maybe quite as much of a machine as the last two. We'll see. And tonight will certainly say a lot about their ability to keep chugging after the way the last two went. I mean, a three-game losing streak for Houston under Kelvin Sampson is almost unthinkable, but a lot of unthinkable things happen in Allen, so we'll see what happens.
You know, Henry, I was very taken back and very interested in what Flory Badunga and Melvin Council had to say after the loss to Cincinnati. I mean, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but kind of seemed like they were alluding to, yeah, I mean, we could admit that we looked ahead a little bit. You know, maybe we didn't take Cincinnati as seriously as we should have. And then Bill Self said he's not buying any of that, right? That, you know, Cincinnati, they've been playing like a tournament team, and he believes they deserve to be in the NCAA tournament. Hard not to argue with that, with how they pounded Kansas in Lawrence on Saturday. Is that what we can chalk it up to? Is just, hey, typical trap game, it happens, really ugly loss, but if they win tonight, we're not even concerning ourselves with it anymore? Or is there a bigger problem at hand here that against a team with that size, that length, that went into a zone defensively, completely overwhelmed Kansas. Which side of the coin are you on?
Yeah, that didn't go so well for me post-game, asking Self about Corey's comments about overlooking them, did it? No, but it was unthinkable to me, honestly, that they could have another kind of look-ahead scenario, because they sort of looked ahead when they had Utah on Saturday and Arizona on Monday. They sort of looked past Utah and were never particularly convincing in that game. They won that one, I think, because Utah is just a lesser team as compared to Cincinnati. But as the Cincinnati big men demonstrated, they're versatile and capable players, and Corey Badunga and Bryson Tiller really didn't play up to the level in terms of defending and rebounding they had of late. You know, it would be easy to just brush this off and say KU has one kind of inexplicable home loss every year of late. You look back, last year they lost to a West Virginia team that didn't have Tucker DeVries at its disposal on New Year's Eve. Year before, they lost to BYU. That was the year BYU lost in the first round under Mark Pope. The year before that, they lost by 22 or 23 to TCU at home. There's always one of these, but you don't expect it to come at a juncture where the team is fighting for positioning in the Big 12 race, and as they did entering Saturday, like, has a chance to really be up there and get a share of it. Now they're kind of out of the league race. You know, not technically mathematically eliminated, but no longer in control of their own destiny. And absolutely, it puts more pressure on their ability to take care of business tonight. But I do think there are some things from that loss in Cincinnati that you can't just totally brush off. Like I said, the rebounding was an issue. Offensive rebounding has been or conceding offensive rebounds has been a problem for the Jayhawks all season. I believe they're 320th in the nation in the opposing offensive rebounds they allow per game. They have about 10. Cincinnati didn't even convert those very well in the second chance points. I think they had something like 11 offensive rebounds going to 8 second chance points. But, man, there was a big one because Jalen Celestine grabs one and drifts back to the corner and hits a three to put Cincinnati up 8 for the first time. And that was part of a 17-2 run that kind of ended that game. So that's one big symptom. You know, I think it was, on the flip side, promising maybe to see Darren Peterson get through a full game. But then on the other hand, you watch him in the second half, and there have been plenty of draft analysts and national guys who have pointed this out. He doesn't elevate nearly as much on his jumpers. He doesn't elevate nearly as much on drives to the rim in the second half. And it really feels like whether it's the cramping or other injuries that he's dealt with throughout the year, it continues to take a physical toll on him. So there were absolutely some things you can draw from the Cincinnati game that may continue to bear on KU down the stretch here, and including in tonight's game against Houston.
We discussed this earlier in the first hour. Is there anything you could see out of Darren Peterson tonight that would allay the fears of him having a recurrence of his issues down the stretch? I think a lot of fans are still, there's some, I would say, are still holding on to the idea that, well, if we could just keep him healthy until the tournament, and then, you know, when the lights come on in March, he'll be good. I tend to think that he's going to have to string several full games together in succession before they even come close to ridding themselves of that specter. How do you view that?
Yeah, I agree with you on that front. And, you know, I don't mean to sound harsh, but, like, after the BYU game on January 31st, and by we I don't just mean me and media guys, but, like, the KU coaching staff, too, based on what Bill Self said after Oklahoma State, they thought they were past the cramping, you know? That was the last game in which he had cramped, January 31st, prior to doing it on Wednesday against Oklahoma State. It seems unpredictable and like something that can have a resurgence at any moment. Now, clearly they're making some progress. You know, there was a time this year where he missed entire games because of the cramping, and there was a time where when he was playing, every single game was debilitated by it. Well, now he's at least shown in a few times that he can play to the final whistle. You think about Utah, Texas Tech, Colorado, even though he rolled his ankle in that game, and then, of course, against Cincinnati, even though it didn't do KU a whole lot of good in the second half. But there's reason to believe he can get through games. But I don't think there's going to be anything that, like, totally assuages people's concerns that he could have a recurrence of cramping in an elimination game, for example. And so, you know, it kind of feels like a thing where KU has to get the most out of the minutes that it has with Darren Peterson on the floor. I think one thing that would make people feel a lot better is if he could have a game in which he follows up one of those dynamite first halves he's had. You know, you think about a couple of games in which he had 18 or 20 points in the first half with, like, a reasonably good second half. You know, there's been so many – I mean, He had 13 points by the first media timeout against Oklahoma State, and I believe finished that game with 23. So he's not really keeping up the pace, and of course it's an insane pace to hope for. But, for a guy who's eminently capable of scoring 30 points in a given game, he's only done it once, and that was one where Self kind of had to force him to go back in to shoot those free throws at the end of regulation against TCU to send it to overtime, which, of course, he delivered on. But all that is to say, I just think people would probably feel a lot better if they saw a full game of Darren Peterson looking like he does in the first halves of his good games, which he really hasn't displayed in any of those games I mentioned, Utah, Texas Tech, Colorado, Oregon, Cincinnati.
Henry, you bring up the national pundits over the last week talking about load management and, maybe he should just sit out. We've heard all kinds of takes out here. And one thing that I haven't heard discussed a ton is maybe how much his demeanor impacts the narrative. Now, when I watch him play, you can tell something is up with him. You can tell this is not a load management thing. You can tell he's not 100%. But almost this calm, stoic demeanor, I kind of feel like it's impacted some people's opinion because he's not falling to the ground. He's not spiking something on the bench when he goes out with cramping. And what I would like to say is it's just who he is. He's not going to change. When he hit the game winner against Texas Tech, he didn't fist pump. He didn't pound his chest. He didn't even yell or anything. He just moved back down the court. And I almost think at this point, when he takes himself out of the game, when he's on the sideline, when he's on the bench away from the team, his stoic behavior allows people to create their narrative about him. Do you see it that way, or does this really not matter? It's a moot point.
No, I think that's an astute observation, and it's very much the combination of the fact that he doesn't seem outwardly aggravated that he has to leave, nor does he seem delighted when he does stuff like hit back-to-back threes to win the game against Tech, or just about anything he did in the first half against Baylor or BYU, or the biggest expression of emotion we've seen from Darren all year was when he dunked on a guy against Utah and just kind of gestured to him like indignantly, like asking for a foul afterward. That's basically the most you see. And yeah, that's the kind of guy he is. But because he is this tabula rasa, as it were, this kind of blank slate, people can project their own opinions and narratives onto him. And of course, part of that is because of the fact that he hasn't spoken to the media all that much, which creates even more of a blank slate. I think we've gotten him after 3 games this year, North Carolina, Iowa State, and Texas Tech, and he hasn't done like a midweek press conference or anything in which it's kind of away from the pressure of a game and just kind of general discussion. So, but that's a choice clearly that he and KU have made to limit his exposure, which is fine. That's their prerogative. But all that is to say, absolutely, the way he goes about it, which in many cases being stoic is looked at as a virtue. But in Peterson's case, because he is kind of this, I don't know, he can serve as a placeholder for people to just say whatever they want about him. And, there's been a little bit of a counter-narrative, both from himself and from a lot of people who have worked with Darren, like his prolific prep coach or his personal coach. But, it doesn't get nearly as loud because the prevailing thing is for people to just go on TV and blow V8 without having even watched Kansas basketball all year.
By the way, that's the first time, 22 years of doing this show at this station, that I've heard someone be able to work tabula rasa into a conversation and have it mean something. So
it's true.
Well done, Henry.
Happy to contribute.
It's a great point, and we know it's going to be a focus tonight, Henry, on what Darren Peterson looks like, his elevation, whether he's shooting or he's trying to block a shot, and how his legs hold up in the second half. Another point that I'm not sure has been discussed a lot either has been the struggling play of Trey White. We'll call it that, because this is somebody that was such a main part of the offense, a main key of this team, and still is. But when Darren Peterson was out, you got some Herculean performances from Trey White on both sides of the floor, and now over the last 7 to 8 games, he's not been the same player. He's not shooting it as well from deep. He's not getting to the line as much. Is this just a typical college player slump, or do you think maybe he's not 100%? Because I know there was the root canal thing. I can't imagine playing through that, but it's different than what Darren Peterson's going through. Slump, injury-related, randomness, where are you at with Trey White?
Yeah, the root canal thing was brutal. From what I heard, it was a past root canal he had already had that became infected and then required oral surgery, which is a grim thing to think about. But, yeah, you're absolutely right. In the earlier part of the season, White has been playing well above his career level of production. And you don't usually see that from a guy who is now playing at his fourth power conference school in 4 years and is kind of a known quantity. Someone who described himself even before the season as sort of a jack of all trades. He was known as a glue guy at Illinois. And he's continued to be that, but there were absolutely games where, not that he put on a cape or anything, but games where he made some of the biggest plays. You think about the Players era in particular, and in those early Notre Dame and Syracuse games, he was great there. He was the leading scorer when KU demolished Iowa State at Allen to kind of set that 8-game winning streak in motion. Absolutely, Trey White, Melvin Council draws all the attention, but great evaluations by the KU staff on those two who weren't necessarily the hottest of commodities. But yes, it always felt like he was due for kind of a regression to the mean. It's just been kind of more prolonged and noticeable than one might have hoped. I do think he was better against Cincinnati, but one issue with Trey in the beginning of the season was that the ball would stick with him too much, but people were able to forgive it because he would find some way to draw a foul at the end of the shot clock or, make a pass and then relocate to get a look for a three or something. That's not really happening as much. The ball's getting stuck with him, and he's throwing up these wild reverse layups that don't even draw iron or whatever. It feels like he's forcing it a little bit at times, but I do think he's on the right track. After last weekend, not this past weekend, things were looking pretty grim following that Iowa State game, which was probably his worst game of the season. I think he had, he was 0-for from the field. But he made some shots in the second half against Oklahoma State and had kind of a more normal showing against Cincinnati. I do feel like the arrow's pointed back up for Trey. But, yeah, it's been kind of a less talked about element, absolutely, at times when KU struggled of late.
Last one for me, Henry. Really appreciate your time. And of all the guys that we've talked about, we know what they bring to the table. We know what they have to be in the tournament. Darren Peterson, he's got to be 100% if they're to make a deep run. Melvin Council can't have a performance like he did on Saturday if they're going to make a deep run. Trey White can't have a performance like he did against Iowa State if they're going to beat one of those top teams. To me, the X factor of this team I don't have the numbers in front of me, maybe you do, but when Bryson Tiller plays phenomenally, when he has a double-double, when he puts up 16 or 18 points, has a couple of shots from outside fall in, I give KU's chances of losing in that game less than 2%. When they get an A-plus performance from Bryson Tiller, they can beat just about anybody in the country. In fact, if I didn't even see the score tonight and I saw Bryson Tiller went for 18 and 12, I'd put house money on the fact that they would win that game, which is why I call him the X factor. He plays well, they're usually going to win, but also it's one of those things where if he doesn't play well, if the other guys do their job, they can still win a lot of games. But he can take them to that different level. Is that how you view him, or is there somebody else on this team that would be an X factor?
Well, I think you're correct. There are obviously other people you can make the case for. I think Omarco can be an X factor to some extent, but that's more on the defensive end, although he has had some good scoring showings of late. But I absolutely think Tiller is the correct choice, and Self has called him the X factor as early as the start of the season, probably before they even knew he was going to start every game after the fourth. He's developed on the trajectory you expect from a freshman, which is periods of great improvement, followed by a plateau, followed by periods of great improvement, followed by a plateau, and so on. It took some time for him to realize, because he's probably a more natural four-man or even a big wing. He plays like one. It took some time for him to realize he's got to be in there crashing the boards. He's got to be able to hold up in those kind of one-on-one post scenarios. He has to play to his size, in other words, as Self has put it. But when we've seen him do that more often, it has really gone a long way toward lifting KU to some big victories. And you see him make plays where it's just eminently apparent that he's a future pro. First of all, you think about the start of that Arizona game. He had 14 points in the first 10 minutes or whatever. They don't stay in that game without the play of him and Jamari McDowell. And then Cincinnati the other day, he put like a double spin move on a guy and nailed a fadeaway jumper. He's just really technically skilled in a way that KU hasn't had in a big man in a while. But Bill Self loves playing with multiple big men. And they love to draw stuff up for big-to-big passing, and it puts so much stress on opposing defenses. You know, we saw Tiller have a career-high 7 assists. He almost got a triple-double against Oklahoma State, which was his first career double-double. But he's clearly developing quite a lot. I definitely think in some ways he can be the missing piece, and already has exceeded any expectations for this first year. You have to think about the fact that he hadn't played since, March of 2024 before starting the season because of an injury he had. That's how he ends up enrolling early and redshirting last year to begin with. But, yeah, he's showing why he was such a highly touted prospect before the injury.
Well, Henry, appreciate your time and have fun covering the game tonight.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. It should be a great atmosphere like it always is.
Absolutely, yeah. You got Kansas and Houston battling for keeping pace at the top of the Big 12. Can't say battling for first place. Houston on a 2-game losing streak, and then Kansas looking to bounce back after their loss to Cincinnati. And there was Henry Greenstein of KUSports.com giving us his breakdown on Bryson Tiller, Darren Peterson, Melvin Council, Trey White. Great stuff. And as I said for Matt's interview, missed any of that interview or caught it late, Kyle will have that podcasted by the end of the show. We'll take a quick break, come back, and wrap up hour number 2 of the program. Wrapping up hour number 2 of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, filling in for Seren Petro. He's en route to the NFL Draft Combine. He'll be back on air tomorrow, but we still got Kurtis and Kyle here, and we got 2 more hours of the show. And we're going to be leading you in to Kansas and Houston. Just had a great interview with Henry Greenstein. He's been covering the team all year, doing a great job. Hawks are a 1.5-point underdog against the Cougars. KU ranked 14th. After their loss to Cincinnati, they dropped 6 spots. Houston falls from 2 to 5. Another opportunity for Kansas to beat a top 5 opponent, and boy, do they need it if they want to stay atop or near the top of the Big 12. Pre-game will start at 6 with Kansas Nation. Then you got Kansas pre-game and the game at 8. Hour number 3 coming up next.
All right, baseball. How many Missouri natives have been named to at least 10 All-Star games? Brought to you by La Feta Delicatessen.
Hour number 3 of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, filling in for Seren Petro. He and Todd Lebo are en route to the draft combine. They'll be bringing you tons of coverage all week long. Only reason he's not doing a show today is because, as I said, actually in a moving vehicle. They're on their way, and they do have the equipment to set up remotely. Otherwise, there would be no reason in going, right? But that should be great to listen to, hear what's going on down there. It's different this year because the Chiefs are top 10 in the draft, right? Most of these NFL drafts, you're basically picking in round 2, and nothing is as exciting as it is right now to be back in the top 10. Now, it's not exciting to be picking top 10 after what happened this year when they go 6-11, but still, now with the mock drafts out there, can't get enough of them. Can't get enough of them. So will it be Jeremiah Love? Will it be Reuben Bain, David Bailey, Caleb Downs, Malachi Lamone? We'll see. And I'm sure Seren and Todd will have their thoughts on that. We're just stalling a little bit here on the 2-minute drill, and we are going to go to New York and talk with Dan Schwartzman of D Sports Media. Dan, how are we doing this afternoon?
Fantastic, Jack, except we have about 15 inches of snow on the ground here. So quite the day, my friend.
Oh, man. We're getting closer and closer to spring. I'm not sure exactly when the spring weather starts up there. I know for here you never really can predict what it's going to be. But we were just talking NFL draft. Seren, of course, is heading down to the draft combine. The Giants, as we know, hold the number 5 pick. And the Jets hold the 2nd pick. Where do you see those two teams going with their selections?
I think the Jets go defense, and I think they go pass rusher at 2, and that kind of has led to this dilemma of Arvell Reese, Reuben Bain, or David Bailey are the 3 guys that are prominently mentioned for that number 2 slot. Big debate as to who truly should be that number 2 pick. Each has their strengths. Each has their weakness. I think for the Giants, they have to go offense. You have to give Jackson Dart more weapons. You know, Malik Neighbors missed most of last year's the injury. He'll be back, and he, of course, is a great weapon. But you need to get another receiver. You need to get some help for Jackson Dart, maybe even offensive line. The Giants could use some help as well there. But I think clearly Jets go defense, Giants go offense.
What's been the public perception of Matt Nagy joining the staff in New York?
Honestly, not much. You know, when it comes down to it, really, John Harbaugh's walking on water right now, okay? He can part the Red Sea. Mm-hmm. So if Matt Nagy says that me, Dan Schwartzman, should be the defensive coordinator, Giant fans will say, hey, you know what? If Harbaugh says he's good, he's good. So, you know, Nagy's got a great reputation around the league, maybe not so much as a head coach, but clearly as a coordinator. And I think Giant fans, as long as they recognize the name, are happy with the selection. And they know he's had success. And they know if John Harbaugh's picked him, he's got to be the right guy. So, again, whoever Harbaugh decides to put on this staff, Giant fans are going with them at this point.
Switching over to the Jets, what's the plan going to be for Breece Hall? Or franchise tag, extending him? Is he going to be back in a Jets uniform next year?
I think the answer is he will be back in a Jets uniform. The question is in what form. Now, I think the Jets do try to give him a long-term deal. Look, he's 24. Remember, when he came into the league, he came in very young. And he is somebody that if the Jets let him go, Jet fans are going to really be, my French, pissed. Because he was one of the few bright spots offensively on just a horrendous offense. Breece Hall is an absolute weapon, and I know he's not happy being here right now, and I don't blame him. I think they've underutilized him. But I think the Jets with, 5 first-round picks in the next 2 years, multiple second-round picks in the next 2 years, a boatload of cap space, need to sit down Breece Hall at a high level, I mean GM, owner, whatever it might be, and say, Breece, you are part of the building block with Garrett Wilson that we want here with the young quarterback we bring in the draft next year or even this year, whatever the situation is. You are somebody that we believe in. Pay the man. Give him his 3 years, $45 million, 4 years, 60, whatever it takes. But you got to make sure you get yourself Breece Hall back here at the Jets. If it means franchise tagging him and him being unhappy, so be it. But you cannot let him go for nothing.
Jumping over to baseball and starting with the Mets, I know one of the biggest storylines coming out of camp was Francisco Lindor and the broken hamate bone, which apparently was plaguing a lot of teams out there. For whatever reason, the hamate bone was just a big injury happening at a lot of camps. But looking at the left side of the infield, I know they bring in Bo Bichette. Is Bo going to stay over there at third, or will he still get some reps at short because of that injury that Lindor's working back from?
Jack, that's a great question, and I don't know if you have an answer yet. Bichette, though, has been a butcher so far at third base. Now, listen, Bo Bichette's a great player, great bloodlines, obviously, with that family, but I think it's hard, just take a guy and be like, okay, we're now going to make you a third baseman. It's not that easy. He's working hard over there. We know he can, hit in his sleep, but defensively he may be a problem. And I think if Lindor is going to miss time, it makes sense to put Bichette there because he is capable. Obviously, he knows how to play the position. But that said, if he's your third baseman long term, do you want him to kind of stagnate his growth learning third base because you're going to shove him back at shortstop for a while? I'm not sure that makes any sense. So, the Mets have some questions for sure when it comes to the utilization of Bo Bichette. The good news, though, again, is offensively, there's no learning curve there. Going to the National League, he should hit fine. And I think that when it's all said and done, he'll be fine defensively because he is working hard right now learning the position.
And finally, ending things with the Yankees and Garrett Cole facing live hitters, coming off of Tommy John. What should the expectation be for him in rejoining the rotation? Is it same old Garrett Cole, front end stuff here, or is it going to be somebody that you might need to start viewing as a number 3, number 4 at his age and also coming off of a significant injury?
He's throwing at 97 miles an hour. I think he hit 96.9 in his first work of the spring. Garrett Cole is an absolute workhorse. He's never really had an injury problem until obviously this. And this is major, don't get me wrong. But Garrett Cole is, no one works harder than Garrett Cole, and no one's going to work harder to get back to where he was. I think Garrett Cole is still an ace. And the great thing about this Yankee rotation is he actually doesn't have to be an ace. The Yankees really did not address much this offseason. Frankly, they were a poverty team this offseason. And by the way, that has not played well here in New York when Hal Steinbrenner wants to cry poverty, when the Dodgers are buying everybody left and right. But that said, this rotation may be the best in baseball or very close to being the best in baseball. Dodgers may have the edge there. But when you talk about having, Max Fried's been fantastic. Rodon's hurt too, but Rodon, when healthy, is pretty darn good. Luis Hill was a Rookie of the Year. He'll be back. Schlittler was great last year. Warren's a very good young pitcher, made a lot of strides last year. Garrett Cole doesn't have to be that number 1. He can, in fact, be that number 2 or even number 3 in this rotation. So I'm not sure the pressure's going to be on him when he does get back to have to be that ace guy. But I think when he's back and he's warmed up and he's slinging the baseball like we know he can, Garrett Cole pitch like an ace.
Dan, appreciate your time, and you stay warm.
You as well, my friend. Thank you so much, Jack.
Heading down to Dallas to talk with Alec Medford of 105.3 The Fan. Alec, the news over the weekend of the Cowboys signing Javonte Williams, who had a great year, to a 3-year deal. Was this the right move?
Oh, 100% it was the right move. It's the case of one of those guys that, he was preaching to the choir all season, especially after the playoff chances were eliminated. The questions start getting asked, well, do you want to stay here after a breakout year? And he said, yeah, you just fall in love with the people in terms of the staff, the teammates, and everything. The offense is going to look predominantly the same in terms of personnel. So, yeah, he wanted to come back, and he took a pretty friendly deal in terms of the money that he's making. He gets to hit free agency again before he's at age 30, which is, the number of death for running backs. So, yeah, I think it makes sense for both sides.
One of the talking points this offseason for you, I know, will be George Pickens and this franchise tag. I know Dallas' COO, Stephen Jones, had said that it should be finalized in the next week. I know we asked you about it being the right move for Javonte Williams, but how do you see this playing out with George Pickens and this franchise tag?
Yeah, so it gets more muddy each day, if we're being totally honest, because we all know how the Cowboys operate with just long-term deals in general, but especially with the franchise tag, they like to wait things out till the last possible second. So it's just, okay, we've seen this story before. They're going to place the tag on him at the day of the deadline, and they're going to get a deal done probably right before the season starts, if not week 1, just like they did with Dak Prescott. Literally the day of their first game of the season, they got that long-term deal done. So it's like, okay, that's probably what it's going to look like. But the more we wait, the more you hear that maybe they would be open to moving him for the right price in a trade. So it went from placeholder for a long-term deal to a little bit more muddy, especially if Jackson Smith and Jigba gets a deal done in Seattle. I think that's really going to muddy the waters in terms of the wide receiver market. So, I would keep an eye on Seattle. If they get that deal done, I think his future in Dallas becomes very, very uncertain.
Do you believe it's the right decision to have 2 top dollar wide receivers on the cap while also having a quarterback who's got the highest AAV in the league?
Yeah, I think if you do it the right way, it makes a ton of sense. And by the right way, I mean, can you put all those fancy maneuvers and stuff in the contract language that makes the cap hits maneuverable and lower each year? And if you can move some of that money around like they do with the Dak every year, they can flip a switch this year that could open up somewhere in the range of $40 million. I'm not sure what the exact number is off the top of the head, but the Cowboys are some of the best at doing some of that weird contract language to open up salary cap space. So I think that if anybody can make it make sense, it's this front office and Adam Pacifica, the guy who actually comes up with those terms and does all the maneuvering. He's a genius. So I'd say, yeah, this is the right situation looking at how good that offense was last season. So especially getting the running back locked up. I think it's the right move. I think it's all circumstantial, though. When you look at each team that has 2 true wide receivers like that, it's circumstantial. But I think here in Dallas, it makes a ton of sense.
And lastly, want to get your thoughts on some baseball. I know that Kumar Rocker is battling for that number 5 spot in the rotation. Are there any other position battles in camp that are worth noting?
Yeah, it's a really odd year for the Rangers going into spring training because you mentioned that 5th spot in the rotation. That's one that everybody's been talking about. But I'm not so sure that second base, after the departure of Marcus Semien and the trade to the Mets, I'm not so sure that second base is a foregone conclusion. You can have a couple options there. Josh Smith is going to be the front runner in the clubhouse. I know that some of the national media has tried to make a story out of center field. I don't necessarily see that being a battle. I think that's Evan Carter's job to lose with Wyatt Langford taking up left field. But second base could get a little more interesting than people think because if you look at Josh Smith, super utility man that they got from the trade with the Yankees a few years ago, he's been incredible until the last 2 months of the season where he falls off a cliff statistically at the plate. So he hasn't quite adapted to the everyday lifestyle, which maybe that's the year he turns it around, but he'll be the favorite going into it. But I think they're going to exhaust all options to see if maybe a platoon situation happens or maybe he just flat out loses the job.
I did say lastly, but I actually have one more for you, and it's on the NBA side of things. I know the Mavericks had moved Anthony Davis for the trade deadline. Man, you got to tell me, looking back now, what was the point of that trade with all that's transpired since then?
Yeah, it goes back to the Luka trade, and we know there's nothing left to be said about that. It's the worst trade that we've ever seen. But looking at the Anthony Davis trade, it's, co-GMs and Matt Riccardi and Michael Finley getting together and saying, look, we can right a wrong right now. And especially knowing that he's in a contract year, he's demanding through his agent an extension this summer, and they could say, hey, we could just not pay him and try to relieve some of our salary cap and open up some space this summer while getting some expiring deals and maybe a first-round pick in the process, which is exactly what they did. And they got the best possible offer that you were going to get at that stage. Had Anthony Davis not hurt his hand before the deadline, maybe you can talk another team into another first-round pick, make it a three-team deal, something or another. But that was the best you were going to do, and it's really just trying to open up space this summer to where they can add a real free agent for the first time in a while. You do the sign and trade with Klay Thompson a couple years ago, but that's not true free agency. This gives them the chance to actually say, this is Cooper Flagg's team. Who is going to help him the best, whether it's drafting or actually paying somebody on the open market?
Alec, thanks so much for hopping on. You have a good one.
You too. Thanks, man.
Going to Pittsburgh. Talk with Jeff Hawthorne here about a variety of things. But I know right now, Jeff, hockey is on the front of everybody's mind with what happened on Sunday between U.S. and Canada. But I want to get your take on Sidney Crosby and the latest with his health after missing the last 2 games of the Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, hockey is notorious for being as vague as humanly possible about injuries. And even what John Cooper said in that Sid dressed, we don't know exactly what his status. I'd be surprised given the fact that he couldn't play in a gold medal game for his country, something that he yearns to have the opportunity to do, that he would be able to play this weekend. But from initial reports are he should be good maybe in a week or so. We'll kind of see. They'll probably ramp that up, see what he can do in practice, and see where they go from there. But as you know, because of the Olympic break, the hockey schedule is so condensed that whereas missing a week in some years might miss 2 or 3 games, and you can miss 4 or 5 down the stretch right now.
On the Steelers side of things, what are the odds of a return now for Aaron Rodgers? In the last couple of months, have they gone up, stayed the same, or gone down?
So I would say that when Mike Tomlin resigned, they went way down. When it was Mike McCarthy, then it's kind of like a boat that all of a sudden floated back up to the surface, and it became a very real thing again. Listen, they don't really have any other options. They'll talk what they want about Will Howard, but I don't think they really believe at this point a guy who's never even played in a preseason game is a realistic option when you've got T.J. Watt and Cam Hayward and some of the defensive pieces you think are ready to compete. So I think Aaron is a very good possibility. I can't get in his head. No one can. That's why we haven't seen anything done yet. But I think their plan is to have Aaron Rodgers. I think they feel confident that Aaron Rodgers will say yes. And I think they believe with a couple more pieces around Aaron and with McCarthy's offense that they can have success in Pittsburgh that eclipse the 10 wins and playoff loss that they had this past season.
Now, I know in Kansas City, everybody's got their opinion on who they're going to be taking at 9, but in Pittsburgh, who is the fan favorite right now for that 21st selection?
Any wide receiver, any of them. Or trade down and get 7 of them in a row. That's been the big discussion. I mean, they need receivers. They don't, even of the receiving core they had last year outside of Metcalf, none of those guys are under contract. Except Roman Wilson, who was the 3rd-round pick from a couple years ago, couldn't get on the field as they were picking up guys off the scrap heap. So they need help at receiver. Now, could they look free agent? Yes. But is the market going to be driven up? Of course it is, because receivers are so valuable. So I would expect the Steelers to make a couple of selections in this draft at wide receiver. If it's not at 1, it's because somebody slipped that they think could be an impact player at maybe 1 or 2 other positions. Corner would be a big one, but receiver's going to be a big emphasis for them.
Okay, so obviously wide receiver is that focal point for the Steelers, but they got 12 picks in the draft. How do you see them dispersing all of that, right? We know wide receiver is going to be one of them, but how do they round out their draft here?
Yeah, so what you're going to see them do is take some of that and use that as draft capital, and they'll trade up, whether it's could be in the 1st round, more likely in the 2nd or 3rd, where they move up using some of those picks to find different needs. They're not going to use every one of those picks, but they're going to use those picks to try to, jump up and find a player that they really like in one of the first 3, maybe even 4th round, and try to get rid of some, because they've got multiple 3rd, multiple 4th, and I think you'll see some of those packaged in a deal. And I'll say this again, like, this team, whether it might seem silly to the outside, inside, they believe they're close. They're coming off a 10-win season. They get Aaron back. They add a couple of receivers. They feel they're right back in the mix. Whether that's realistic or not, that's the thought process with the Steelers right now.
And lastly, I want to get your thoughts on the Pirates. I know it's early on in camp here, and they had, by Pirates standards, a pretty aggressive offseason. What should the expectation be for this group? Is it they should be in the postseason, they should be more competitive, or is it just not going to be as impressive of a team as maybe some people out there think they might?
It's interesting how you couch that, because we'd say the same thing. By Pirates standards, what they did is they did what major league teams do in the offseason. They get help. They have added to their lineup. Now their lineup, you don't look at and laugh. You think, okay, there are a couple of legit bats that are around Brian Reynolds and O'Neal Cruz. So they've put themselves in a position to be in the mix, I think, for the division. I'm not saying they're a favorite. They still are going to have a couple of guys, whether that's Cruz taking it to another level, a couple of their young pitchers really coming through, but they've at least entered the conversation of being a team that could contend for. They're not the Dodgers, they're not the Mets, or the Phillies, but they're a team I think in the Central that can compete. They still have to have a few things go right for them, but at least it's not a situation where you automatically say basement.
Jeff, thanks so much for hopping on, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right, see you guys.
All right, the La Feta Delicatessen, end of the hour answer. I could use a sandwich right about now. really love one of those. Maybe in about an hour and a half when we get out of here. Baseball. How many Missouri natives have been named to at least 10 All-Star games? Born in Missouri.
It's funny, my mind went to first of somebody that was not born in Missouri but played in Missouri.
Yeah.
Albert Pujols, college ball, and but no, born
in Missouri. We'll tell you there are 3.
Only
Answer was
3.
2
Old school?
2 born in St. Louis. All 3 are old school. 2 born in St. Louis, played for the Yankees, and 1 guy who was born in Liberty but played in St. Louis. So there was a St. Louis link in all 3. Yogi Berra went to 18. Now part of those 18 were the 4-year stretch between 59 and 62 where they played twice. Elston Howard of the Yankees was in 12.
That
he
would
was
have taken me a
born
while.
on this date in 1923. Ken Boyer of Liberty was in 11. Of course, he played for the Cardinals many years. The
I should have gotten
brothers,
Yogi.
Cloyd and Cleet and Ken.
It's amazing, too, that since then,
Yeah.
none.
And Yogi is a guy who I think is greatly underrated by as how good he was as a player, because so many people, his generations, 2 generations at least, think Yogi is just a guy who with the malapropisms, and it's 50% of baseball is 90% mental, just the odd sayings and just his personality. And then they go back and realize he was the best offensive catcher of his era. He was a 3-time MVP and was a tremendous player. But a lot of people don't think about that, because that what lives on with him is the personality. Same thing with I think Lou Gehrig. You ask a lot of people he had Lou Gehrig's disease. They don't,
And the speech
or the Iron Man streak. And they don't know that he had, he was one of the best RBI guys. He drove in 175 runs in 1927 and was one of the best hitters in the history of the game. But that gets kind of lost because he's known for something. To generations, he's known for something else.
And I wonder,
and even his on the field accomplishment, is the streak, not so much as it is his incredible production as a player. The year that Ruth hit 60, everyone talks about how the fact that Ruth hit more home runs than every other team in Major League Baseball that year. They don't washed away as the fact that Gehrig had 47.
That was kind of the point I was going to bring up, is if they played elsewhere.
Yeah.
Or they remembered differently. Because at times when you look at the all-time great teams, Murderers Row, and there's a lot of guys on that team that are Hall of Famers, that are MVP winners. And certain generations, when you think of, if you were to ask the question, well, give me an old Yankees player, I would say 90% of them would say Babe Ruth. Because it's the easiest one to remember.
Yep.
And he hit a lot of home runs. But so did a lot of these guys.
And Gehrig had the opportunity to be out from under the shadow of Ruth when Ruth left. His last year was with the Yankees was 34. He went to the Braves in 35 and retired. So he had some of these great productive years ahead of him, and unfortunately he was stricken by just a brutal disease, and his longevity was cut short, and it was kind of a shame, not just that he passed away early, but he had the opportunity to really separate himself from Ruth. And wasn't allowed to, more or less, for terrible reasons. But kids, check out if you're baseball fans, you like history, just when you hear a name, just go back and look. You can look at all baseball, but just go back and look how amazing some of these players were, and realize that they were more than just personalities, more than just pictures and grainy, sped up films from the past.
Well,
baseball is the one sport that has the history that's easy to you connect the generations. So.
Yeah, and when you bring up these old numbers, old stats, I always hate it when we do this in sports. Of that guy would never be good in this era, right?
Right.
If Babe Ruth were to face Tarek Skubal, he probably couldn't get a hit. And while that may be true, what I'd say is for players back then, that was the skill level. You still had to be great at it. Nobody was throwing 100. It didn't make the sport easier because it's not like there were a bunch of these guys that could throw 100 miles an hour and they just weren't playing at the league. That was incredibly hard to still be successful. driving 175, hit 400, hit 60 home runs.
And with Ruth, I think part of his dominance was that he had a freak show, a collection of skills that allowed him to be really good at baseball at a time when people who were playing this country hadn't been playing baseball for 100 years.
Yeah.
So the skill level around him wasn't as good, and an entire race was not allowed to play at the time. So I'm not trying to denigrate Ruth. I think he's if you wanted to say he's the greatest player of all time, it's easy to make that argument, and it's hard to push back on, particularly considering the fact that he may have been, had he continued to pitch, he may have been the best left-handed pitcher in the history of the American League. I mean, he was a tremendous pitcher. He still holds World Series records from 100 years ago. The fact that he could do that, and the minute he became a hitter, he just started raking. But there were some elements, I think, to explain the freakish nature to which he dominated the game. Had everything I just mentioned not been in place, had it been other things, he still would have been the best player of his era, probably at least the first half of the 20th century. But there were other, I think, factors which allowed him to completely dwarf what everyone else did.
Yeah, I think there's
a huge guy. He was
massive.
Just from a physical standpoint, he towered over many of the other players of the era.
Yeah, and that's just the only point I would try to make about any different era. It's when you talk about NBA debates and Bill Russell wouldn't be successful in the current. I'm like, well, it doesn't mean they weren't a great player if they weren't going up against centers or guys that are 7'1" now, like Victor Wembanyama, who can score at 7'5". That would be unheard of to see back then. It doesn't mean they weren't great at what they did.
Right.
Yeah, they might have been able to dominate a little bit easier, but in baseball, what is still a constant is it's incredibly hard to put bat to ball and do it as successful as guys like Yogi Berra did, Ted Williams, Lou Gehrig.
It's a sport that relies the most on a skill set of at least the big three and probably the big four. And hockey certainly is a sport that relies on a lot of skill and physicality, and we saw all of that at work on Sunday. The last point I'll make as far as older players and newer players is something that every time you hear about Derrick Henry and just how freak show big he is and how fast he is and how it's like I've heard people say there's never been anybody like this before, and I'm like, then you might want to look up Jim Brown.
Yeah.
And look at the size of the offensive line he played behind. The fact that he was 6'2", 235 pounds, and could run away from defensive backs in the 1950s and 60s. We already saw Derrick Henry. That's who he was. And the average size of his offensive line were about the same size as he were, and some of them weren't as big. So that's another guy who I think everyone just goes, oh, Jim Brown, yeah, I know he was a great running back. Go back and look. Go back and look at the fact that he led the league every year, but one that he was in the NFL. I mean, it's just ridiculously talented. So, I love the generational. I think the generational baseball comparisons are more confined to baseball than other sports, but they're out there in the other sports if you just care to take the time to look at them and compare them honestly, and don't just say, well, because players now are bigger and stronger and faster that they're necessarily better. And yes, are they? Buck O'Neill said, when he was on David Letterman, famously said, he took the other idea. He goes, what do you mean? They're better than us. They're bigger, stronger. Yeah, but if the players of that era had played today, they'd be bigger, stronger, and faster.
Yeah,
they have
more resources.
Yeah. So the debate, the intergenerational debate, to me in baseball or any sport is endlessly entertaining. It's much more entertaining than LeBron versus MJ. I'm so tired of that. In fact, if you ever want to see me walk away from you, ask me about LeBron and Michael. I'll be like, no.
I understand that it gets clicks and it gets people to talk about it because it's a very common debate, but I hate any debate that involves arguing about different generations and how the game was played and who would be good and who wouldn't.
What I hate about that debate is that it's terribly unfair to LeBron James, and that you literally can't talk about him. You can't praise anything he's done without someone reminding him of Jordan. Jordan, comparing him to Jordan. And if you're going to say Michael Jordan is the greatest player in basketball history, fine. But we're going to take shots at the guy who's the second greatest player in the history of the game because he isn't as good as the guy who's number one?
Well,
it's absurd.
I know that they played against each other, but you see the arguments made about Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. And I thought for a long time as well, you saw it with Rodgers and Brady. And there were a lot of people that didn't want to pick Brady that would say, well, Aaron Rodgers is a more talented quarterback.
Yeah, the greatest, what I've heard, the way it's
thrower of the football.
The greatest thrower of the football ever. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because the numbers show it to be true. And what we've seen, the plays we've seen him make, I think he probably is the greatest thrower of the football ever.
Well, there's always going to be another side that argues it. And with the Brady and Mahomes debate, it was, well, Brady's beaten him in the postseason twice. He's got more rings. I don't care about the numbers. And Brady still had multiple MVPs, good numbers. Like nobody's denying any of that. But you have these two sides of the argument where same thing, Jordan MJ, where MJ, it's like, well, the number of rings and the scoring that he did. And then you have the LeBron people that go, well, physically, talent-wise, LeBron's the guy, and he played in a much tougher era. It goes on and on and on. The Brady-Mahomes one to me is a little bit more interesting, of course, because there's the local tie to it, but also because they did play against each other.
Which the other two didn't.
And Brady didn't play Mahomes in his prime. He did beat him, but it's always fascinating to me the lengths people go to. It's well, Mahomes is good because of Andy Reid or because of Kelsey and Tyreek Hill or
the
Brady,
refs.
Or but the same Tom Brady went through the same thing.
The refs thing.
And I would say now where when Brady got done playing, it turned from then Mahomes to Allen. And how often do we hear, well, Allen is a more talented quarterback. He puts up the numbers, the thrower of the football, but yet Mahomes has the head-to-head against him in the postseason, the Super Bowl rings. That's something that, unfortunately, for Josh Allen and people that make that argument, it is kind of the ender to that discussion of, well, he doesn't have even a Super Bowl appearance, and Patrick Mahomes does and has won 3 of them and been to 5 total.
And the other two things with Mahomes is, like LeBron, it's impossible for anyone nationally to mention anything about Mahomes without 15 Pats fans. You just look on Twitter, any social media thing. If you see something from Fox or from the NFL about Patrick Mahomes, just look at their mentions. You won't have to go 3 or 4 down before you've got some Brady the GOAT, refs. And the other thing is the whole the Hill Kelsey thing. Like the Hill thing was blown up when he went and won 2 Super Bowls the year after Tyreek Hill left.
Absolutely.
But while they were a trio, people would look at each of the 3 and say, well, of course, even Reed. But let's talk about the 3 of them. Well, of course, Mahomes has got good success. He's got Travis Kelsey and Tyreek Hill. Of course, Tyreek Hill is great. He's got Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball. Of course, Kelsey's great. He's got Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball. Andy Reid coaching. Well, one of the guys has to get credit at some point because they're getting it done. So divide it up however you want. But each guy, they would try to discredit him because he had the benefit of playing with the other 2. What great... Well, almost every great quarterback had at least 2 great players. Who cares? At some point, they got the job done. So, and I think where Mahomes edges out Rodgers is they finally found someone to win the titles to go up against Brady. But it is amazing. People are just rooted in whoever they like, and it's very difficult to get people off of that. And I'm just not a fan of what I would call lazy debates, and I think LeBron versus Michael is a lazy debate. It doesn't take, you just have to go, Jordan's got 6 rings. The Mahomes versus Brady to me has become to some degrees a lazy debate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's I don't have anything else to add. I'm just going to throw out the fact that he's not Brady. So what? I mean, it's like that. Like that's a big shot. And Patrick Mahomes would be the first person to say, I'm not Brady. That's why he's, one of the reasons he's trying to continue to stay and win championships, because he wants to be Brady. He's, as competitive a player as there's ever been. So there are so many good debates you could have in sports that I just don't have time, although we just spent 10 minutes talking about it. I don't have time. We're talking more about this, not the debate. We're not having the debate. I'm talking about the debates as a whole.
The stupidity of the debate.
Stupidity of the debates, yeah. I just don't have time to sit there and grind over MJ versus LeBron. I just don't.
Yeah, okay.
What? They can both be great. Can't we just say Michael Jordan was awesome, LeBron James is awesome, and just forget about it? Because Michael Jordan never had to deal with that. That's the other thing. And sorry to cut you off, Kyle.
No, keep going.
Michael Jordan was never, you could just say he was awesome. He never had to deal with, is he this guy, is he that guy? He wasn't compared to Magic Johnson or Larry Bird or other guys who played his position. LeBron will always be compared to Jordan, and it's to me, it's silly and unfair. Anyway, you were saying.
No, and you bring up a great point. My favorite ones are when, Boston fans will go, yeah, well, Mahomes had Tyreek and Travis, or, MJ had Rodman and Pippen. It's like, yeah, good teams tend to win.
Yes.
That's why they were in the championship more often than not.
Right.
I will think
exactly.
I've always loved this about the NFL, and really it's the case for every league too. It's how the perception shifts once you finally get there. For example, New England had their reign of terror come to an end when Brady left. They did make the postseason with Mac Jones. They get to the Super Bowl with Drake May. And what happens once they got back there? Well, all the lovable qualities of that Patriots team, Mike Vrabel, Drake May, got shoved aside when they played the way they did in the Super Bowl. Because what people say, well, they're only there because their schedule. They're not that impressive. They're here because Bo Nix got hurt. And it happens to everybody. We thought in Kansas City that, gosh, everybody seems to just be so unfair toward us. They hate us for a variety of reasons. It's the refs. We hate Patrick Mahomes. We hate Kelsey. It shifted. Because the first year when they played Brady in the AFC title game, they might have been the most loved team.
Yeah.
So fun, lots of points.
You see those maps about what the nation's rooting for, and the entire country
and then
was
it
red
changed.
except for New England.
The minute you win the first one is when everybody changes their perception of you. Why is Buffalo and Josh Allen loved so much? Because they haven't won it. They are this tortured franchise that if you're an outsider, you go, well, they don't do anything wrong to me. They don't take any success away from me. They're a really good team, but they don't take away success from me in the way the Chiefs do. It's like Houston fans definitely hate the Chiefs because they eliminated them in the postseason. No, it was different this year, but it's what happens to everybody.
Yes.
The Bengals beat the Chiefs. Everybody loved them for a week or 2 weeks because you got the one extra week for the Super Bowl. They lose to the Rams. Everybody said, well, that's embarrassing. They'll never be back.
Yeah.
You start getting made fun of because you reached the mountaintop. And it's why they always say, you got to do it when you're there. Dan Campbell had the most honest quote ever. He goes, I don't know if we'll ever be back. Every coach gives you the coaches speak. Detroit might have been set up to be the most loved Super Bowl winner ever because of all of the heartache and suffering they went through as a fan base. Their fun, likable quarterback, energetic coach. What happened after that first year of success? Everybody starts making fun of them again.
Yep.
Because they didn't come through. They choked it away.
Blew a 17-point lead.
Nobody's immune to it.
At the half. And what's interesting, and also as you look at the Eagles, 13 months ago, they were the darling. Everyone wanted them to beat the Chiefs because they didn't want to see the three-peat. They were tired of Mahomes, and everyone would love the Eagles. That didn't last very long, did it?
No.
Because they won in great fashion, and they were one of the most unlikable teams in football this year. And I'd bet if you ran them through a who likes the Eagles thing now, they're already a team people can't stand because the tush push irritates people. Their jackass coach irritates people, and they've gone from the darlings to a team that I'm sure most of America can't stand now in barely a year.
Well, in this part
because of who they were playing.
Yeah. And the narrative shifts too. Now, I know it's not everybody out there. There's a lot of people that would say, I was so happy to not see the Chiefs in the postseason for the first time. There also was a chunk of people that said it wasn't as fun, that there wasn't this absolute villain to put all of my hatred toward for a game. You had all these great stories in the AFC side. You had the Broncos who hadn't, now we don't like to say that as Chiefs fans, but the Broncos had made it pretty far with Sean Payton. Patriots had done it. Texans had a good storyline. Everybody in the AFC had Jacksonville. Buffalo had their own. But to me, when the narrative shifts is when you kind of go a couple of years, either that player retires or that team's not at the forefront of everything. For example, my entire life, and a lot of people, I know you lived through it, Kyle lived through it, the amount of hate that was thrown on a daily basis toward the Patriots, no matter where you were, was because of their success. Then you have the Deflategate, Tom Brady, everything about it, the Tuck rule. There was all that hatred for years. Then Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs come along. What starts happening nationally? It's like, well, Brady would never do this. Brady, when they had the disagreement at the end, the Kadarius Toney offsides thing, and Patrick Mahomes kind of lost his cool on the sideline. People go, well, Tom Brady would never do that. He would never stoop that. No. It happens, and guarantee you, 10 years down the road, there will be another guy for some team. I don't know if it'll be the Chiefs or it'll be somebody else. I'd probably say the field because the likelihood of having two generational guys back-to-back, it's unlikely. But somebody's going to be that guy that is compared to Patrick Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to have a lot of people, if Patrick Mahomes is done playing at that point, going, man, it was so much better to watch Patrick Mahomes in his prime than this guy. And the same way that people now will go, oh, I loved watching Brady in those old school shootouts. Like,
exactly.
You're lying because no, you didn't.
You
we
didn't
all
then.
suffered watching him dominate for years.
I've always wondered, I know it's the success level, but comparing them to the Patriots, and maybe I'm a bit of a homer, but I wondered this when they were playing the 49ers, that, like, how could you not like the Chiefs? You got the old grandfather head coach who likes his nuggies and, thanks to everyone for their time and looks forward to the challenge and stuff like that. You get the quarterback who sounds like, a Muppet who has cool hair and just goes, yeah, you know what I mean? And you get the tight ends, this kind of goofball who's, just seems to have fun. How is that not America's team? And yet, when the success drove a fan base crazy. And I remember saying, talk about whether the NFL playoffs missed them. When I was on Sound Off, somewhere in the middle of the playoffs, my parting shot or my final thought was that all week long I kept hearing about how the NFL doesn't miss the Chiefs when they weren't there. I said, I heard it on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you don't miss her, dude, stop talking about her.
Yeah.
And that's the way I kind of liked it. All I heard for a week and a half was how much the NFL didn't miss the Chiefs. I don't know. Sounds like you missed them. And maybe the playoffs might have been a little bit better if not this year's team, but the past year's teams. They could have used a little bit of Patrick this year in the playoffs.
Well,
at least on the AFC side.
And I would say this too, that we got some phenomenal games too. Like, it was not about the actual outcome of these games. To me, and it's a personal point of view, and obviously it's not this way with the Chiefs because we are fans of the Chiefs, but you need somebody in every tournament to just hate, to just put all of your disdain toward rooting against. That's why in the AFC Championship game, it's like a lot of people had to pick between the Broncos and the Patriots, and of course in Kansas City, it's like you either said, I hate New England or I hate Denver, but for the rest of the NFL, I can't imagine somebody in Jacksonville
caring about,
being like,
having a vested interest in that game.
Yeah, they both have likable qualities to them. I've got no ill will toward. Yeah. And for so many years, it was, we got to root for Buffalo because we hate Kansas. We got to root for Cincinnati because we hate Kansas City. We got to root for Kansas City because we hate New England. It had been a while since we had that
on that side of the ball, on that side of the conference.
And that's why I just think the more removed from it you get, and we should never take for granted in Kansas City this reign of dominance they've had of 5 of 6 Super Bowls, because there will be a stretch of time they don't do that. New England, as great as that run was, a decade between Super Bowls.
We're already back-to-back years of not winning one. So,
and it feels like forever, doesn't it? And to have that level of expectation, for a lot of people, I'll say this, Kay, it doesn't matter if you are the most likable, if you have the most polite quarterback, easy to root for coach. Teams that are successful are designed to be hated.
Yeah.
There has never been a team with an extended run of success that is just loved by. I would say the closest, and you lived through it, Kyle and I didn't, but for our generation, you hear about the 90s Bulls. They're tied back to Jordan. Like, they're so cool. They won all the time. I guarantee you there was more people that hated the Bulls for their reign of dominance.
We just didn't have Twitter back then.
You didn't have Twitter, and that's also a difference to this. Even the early run for the Patriots, it was not as popular as it is now, and that's why maybe it seems like it's a little bit more overblown, because what happens the minute a Chiefs game is on or they tweet about something, comment section opens up, you're able to run with it. But that's always my take on it. And Chiefs fans shouldn't be upset that people do hate your team. It means you matter enough to hate. Yeah. I thought it was so insufferable to be this lovable, losing franchise of just constantly losing in the first round where you went, God, you got to feel for those passionate fans. No, you want to be the obnoxious ones that have people in different countries repping your jersey and saying, oh, I want the Chiefs to come to my city. I'm saving up money to go to the Chiefs game when they come here because I just can't wait to root against them and hate them. It's because you've done some level of winning that people are either A, jealous of, or B, just have resentment towards you doing it, or they don't believe it's valid in what you're doing. And that's what we saw the Patriots too.
At the height, and this is my last point, at the height of the past dynasty, there was this thing about, and it was in the Boston accent, they hate us because they ain't us.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated that. I just wanted to smack every person that I saw. And then this happened with Chiefs. I'm like, that's kind of true.
Yeah.
They kind of hate us because they ain't us.
And
I was like, all right, I apologize to every Pats fan who used to say that because I understand what that means being a fan base of a team that's a fan of a team that's reviled nationwide for their success.
A great league needs to have a hated villain. Do not push yourself away from that narrative. Embrace it. Embrace being a villain because it won't be that way forever. And you know what? If you're then a couple years removed, the Patriots, whoever thought they would be in a position where they'd be a lovable story with a lovable coach, and it took a few years of a rebuild, and the whole narrative changed. It doesn't take as long as you think it is.
No.
That's why for Chiefs fans, embrace the now of still being a very hated franchise around the NFL. It's because you do a lot of winning, and you do matter to a lot of other teams out there. We'll take a quick break, come back, and wrap up hour number 3 of the program. Wrapping up hour number 3 of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, filling in for Soren Petro. He's back tomorrow, live from the NFL Draft Combine. Kurtis Seaboldt, Kyle Collier still here. We'll have Need to Know to kick off hour number 5. Also talk Royals with David Lesky. They were in action earlier today against the Cubs. Want to get this report in. This is out of Arizona, Tucson. Jason Shear, who covers the team for Wildcat Authority. With the injury report coming out tonight, I expect both Koa Pete and Dwayne Erstode to be out for Baylor and Kansas.
Wow.
They host the Jayhawks on Saturday. Koa Pete, we know, a phenomenal freshman. He's missed the last couple games. Dwayne Erstode had a decent performance against Kansas in a limited role. It looks like they're not going to be playing in that game on Saturday. First up, though, the Cougars for KU tonight.
All right, he led the league in hit by pitch 7 years in a row. Who is he? Brought to you by La Feta Delicatessen.
Hour number 4 of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB. I'm your fill-in host today, Jack Johnson. Kurtis Seaboldt here. Kyle Collier as well, producing this thing. We're now going to tell you what you need to know, as if we haven't covered that already.
Yes, but these are things you need to know.
Absolutely need to know.
The first 3 hours of things you kind of like
Take
to
it
know.
if you
It'd be
want.
cool if you knew it, but
You can-
it's not completely essential.
You could talk about debates of different generations of players.
For the next 20 minutes, these are things you absolutely need to know.
Absolutely. Must have 100%.
Yep.
And what better way?
Don't leave home without it.
Yeah. What better way to kick this off than some audio from the two coaches on the sideline tonight?
Or tip this off.
Hello. Or
someone's a writer.
And then also for the hockey perspective. Face off.
Yes, we're going to have a face off. There's a face off in the corner. Really?
Yeah. Now I sound like an idiot. So I need to send it over to people that don't sound like idiots. And these two guys tonight, they're going to be Hall of Famers. They are Hall of Famers. Yeah. They are probably going to have their A game from a coaching standpoint. It's a matter of, will their players? We know for Kansas, they certainly did not have their A game on Saturday against the Bearcats. That was probably their worst overall performance of the season. The only other one I could think of, I was going to say maybe second half against West Virginia, second half against North Carolina.
It was it was a loss that had not happened.
No. And
for this team in decades.
You will know a lot about this team tonight. How personally they took that ass kicking by a 14-12 basketball team. And though Cincinnati has played well of late, they're top 55-ish in KenPom.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just excuses for losing to a team that probably, unless they continue to look like that the rest of the way, will be on the outside looking in. Might make a deep run in the NIT, but if you play for Kansas, you're not making excuses for losing to an unranked 14-12 basketball team in late February.
For losing to a team whose coach was apologizing to fans.
And crying, nearly crying. And
Well,
they're ready. That everything about that game stunk.
Out loud, as
And
Pete would say.
I know Bill Self thought that same way. And Self did not like the way that his team played on defense on Saturday.
We were just awful today defensively, and then they were great. I mean, they played great. Their bigs dominated, and their guards, we didn't pressure them. They got where they wanted to. So it was a combination of defensive rebounding, their guards, basically getting where they want to go, but their bigs, they destroyed us.
They did get destroyed, and the toughness was not there. And Henry Greenstein, who we had on in the 3 o'clock hour, he had brought up giving up those offensive rebounds. And you're facing a Houston team tonight that will knock you over for a rebound. Do it legally, because that would be over the back or that'd be a foul. But that is a Houston team, like Cincinnati, that is not afraid to get in a physical brawl for a rebound. And they've got a lot of height, Cincinnati did. Houston, not as much as Cincinnati. But if KU's not ready to go from the opening tip, this is a Houston team that can punch you in the mouth and you can't recover from it.
Yeah.
And if there's any silver lining, as I say this and trying to push away any excuse to make on Saturday, this isn't really an excuse. It's about what you can learn from Saturday. It's that you get punched in the mouth like that, you sure as hell better not make it 2 games in a row. If they had just walked all over Cincinnati, never really worried, there could be a real chance where Houston comes in tonight on that 2-game losing streak and KU winning back-to-back games against lesser opponent, where Houston says, we got to have this more than you. And we are going to scratch and claw to make sure that we don't lose 3 games in a row. But going back to that performance on Saturday, and especially on the glass.
Beaten by 11.
11. Self was asked why his team was beaten on the boards so badly.
I'd say they were more aggressive. They were more physical, and we played soft.
Soft.
That's
when Bill Self says soft.
Yeah,
you know it's bad.
He knows he means it. I was looking at the numbers, 40-29, alluding to the first piece of sound we heard, 14-9 on the offensive glass. But Kansas outscored them on second chance points 12-8, despite being beaten 14-9 on offensive rebounds. I think if they're beaten 14-9 on offensive rebounds tonight, they're not going to be outscoring Houston 12-9. or 12-8 on second chance points. It's going to be 15-6 or something like that. That's they're a lot better team. You don't want to lose that battle. If they get out rebounded by 11 tonight, it's going to be really, really tough sailing.
Absolutely. And Houston, they're going, unlike Cincinnati, who just they get those offensive rebounds and then they wouldn't hit a shot, or they would miss the layup, or they'd miss the open three. Houston's just not going to do that. If you give them a second or third opportunity on one possession, they're 100% cashing in on one of those attempts, whether it be a layup or it be a three-pointer. Bad energy all the way around for Kansas on Saturday. And even the first half, just a lackluster performance. Second half, they got their ass kicked. And Self was asked about Melvin Council actually saying the team had bad energy.
No, there wasn't bad energy, but I don't think that we were as enthusiastic. I don't think we were as energetic. I don't think what he said is necessarily maybe the right phrase, but certainly I could feel it too. I could feel that it was a lot like the Utah game, to be honest with you.
And that's where, as Henry was telling us, they didn't come ready to play against Utah, and Utah hung around. Utah's just a bad basketball team. Cincinnati is not Houston or Arizona, but they're not Utah. No. And you play with your food for too long in this conference, somebody's going to take advantage of it.
Yeah, there were a lot of years when they could do that about every 3 out of every 4 nights. Not now.
No, it's great for the conference that there's few cupcake games. There's just a lot of teams that are still hungry and still fighting for their season to stay alive. Cincinnati is one of those teams, and Flory Badunga was about the only guy I thought played well on Saturday. Now, Self said nobody played well. I'd push back a little bit. Defensively, Flory was not great. Offensively, he was one of the reasons it was close for 70% of that game. But Flory Badunga had said they actually didn't respect the Bearcats, and Bill Self didn't agree with that.
Obviously, we should have respected them more than what we did, and I feel like we didn't.
Flory said he felt like they should have respected the opponent more. What do you make of the fact that it's still possible for you guys to overlook opponents, having seen firsthand?
I'm not going to buy that. Okay, so respecting opponents more, maybe coming out with the same energy that you have against Arizona and other people would be equal respect. We didn't do that today, but don't make something out of nothing, because no team is on point and at a 10 every game of the season, regardless if you're playing home or away. So I'm not buying that. We respected their opponent, but the bottom line is we didn't bring it as a unit from an energy standpoint, like you got to when they're good. I mean, they're obviously. I mean, we played an NCAA tournament team today. There's no doubt about that. They've had their moments this season where they've been inconsistent and not as good, but they were great today.
That's one of the things, by the way, also, we learned in our discussion with Henry Greenstein that he was the one that asked that question.
Total
I didn't realize
coincidence.
that when I pulled that this morning, that we would be talking to the guy who actually asked that question. One of the things you heard there at the end, they played great, is I'm going to say it's a bee in his bonnet, but as his team has kind of struggled sometimes this year, Bill Self has talked a lot about how in seasons past, they wouldn't necessarily play well, but they would at least make sure the other team didn't play well. There have been too many games, I think, in his mind, and I think he's right, where they haven't played particularly well, but they've also exacerbated it by allowing the other team to play well, and one of those games was certainly on Saturday. If they could have made Cincy, if they could have mucked it up a little bit, maybe they're in this game late and they can find a way, through some Allen Fieldhouse magic to get that thing done. But they're not good enough to let a Cincinnati team play that well and beat them, even at home.
I find it interesting, too, that even though Bill Self said, I'm not buying that crap, right, or another word that we can't say over the air, to me it's more telling what Flory Badunga and Melvin Council said.
Yeah.
Because even though Bill Self's coaching, Bill Self's not playing on the floor. And if you hear a player say, yeah, we overlooked them. I mean, I really do appreciate the honesty, because nothing grinds my gears more than getting your ass kicked by an inferior team and you go, yeah, there's nothing wrong. We just we didn't play well today. No, tell us what we all saw happening, which was you overlooked an opponent. And that, to me, is, I wouldn't say that Bill Self's lying, but he probably, as a coach, is saying, no, we didn't overlook them. We didn't play well. But a player also understands what's going on in their mind. And I kind of got from that Flory Badunga was going, we kind of started taking this game more seriously when it was too late, when we were playing with our food for 75% of this game.
And sometimes the team is kind of on the edge there. That's all they need is just an opportunity. Let us be in the game, and you can find some wind in your sails if you think you got a chance to win. And the closer it got, and they're like, we can win here on the road against this team. And energy was never going to be a problem with Cincinnati once they realized at the midway point of the game that they were still in it.
And the crowd just really couldn't get into it. I'm not blaming the fans at all on that. They didn't have many reasons to stand up and get loud because KU was just so lethargic in that game. Now tonight, different story whether this game's going well or not. That crowd's going to be on fire, and a big reason for it to stay that way, to have that sustained success, to have the energy as loud as it was, or the noise as loud as it was against Arizona. Well, it's if Darren Peterson has a typical Darren Peterson performance that's good. I say typical. Hasn't had many of them.
Has the efficiency, but plays longer.
Yeah, if he can have a first half like he did against BYU and does it again in the second half, Allen Fieldhouse is going to be on fire, and this team's going to win comfortably. But Self was asked how he thought Peterson played on Saturday.
I didn't think anybody played well today, so I'd certainly include all our players with that. The thing about it is, and we can chop it up however much we want to, but, the defensive intensity from everybody was lacking. And sometimes we look at guys to see how effective they are based on their offensive numbers. And I didn't think that we did anything to cause any type of rhythm adjustments or anything like that ever made them feel uncomfortable.
No,
Get back to that. That's that point that I alluded to before that. Didn't make the other team feel uncomfortable.
Yep.
They can play their B game or their C game on offense if they can at least make the other team play poorly, and they didn't do that.
That is a good KU team's calling card. I'm going to make you uncomfortable. We may have our C-plus performance offensively. We are going to make it really difficult for you to take advantage.
We'll get you in a rock fight, and we have better rocks.
Yeah, and that is the case with this team. It's why it can be frustrating when they don't do that against inferior opponents. Tonight, if you don't make Houston uncomfortable like they do to almost everybody out there, and I do want to make the point that, and Henry said this, it's not the same Houston team as last year. It's a younger team. They're not as well-rounded, but they can make you uncomfortable.
And as you'll hear Kelvin Sampson here in a few moments, they're not scoring in the same way that they like to score, which will be – but we'll get to that in a second.
That was a rather ugly game for them on Saturday against Arizona. But going into tonight, Self was asked what his message was for the big game against the Cougars.
Things happen, and we got to stay together, and I think that we will. Without question, they're great kids, but we weren't competitive today. And the message is, if you can't make other people play poorly, no matter where you're playing, it could be a long afternoon or evening, and that's exactly what happened. We didn't do anything to get them out of rhythm.
Really, Curtis, there's 2 games of the 7 losses that stand out to me where no Kansas fan could say, well, they didn't have Darren Peterson, or, they fought their tails off, something didn't go their way late. There's only 2 games this year where, as likable as this group has been, there was just 0 excuses for how they played. It was against West Virginia, and it was against Cincinnati on Saturday. Even the UCF game, Darren Peterson didn't play in the second half. That's when he was seen on the sideline, on the bench with the Theragun, and you had to go through that whole cycle again. West Virginia, he played. Against Cincinnati, he played.
Yeah.
And you just were never in sync. And those are the only 2 losses this year. Those are the only 2 games where you can't take any positives away. However, if you want to be an optimist, and I know that I certainly was not after the game.
And having heard this sound, this is not Bill Self being an optimist, as you'll hear the tone of his voice.
No,
There's a question he was asked, though.
He was asked if it was a positive that Darren Peterson finished the game on Saturday.
Yeah. If we're going to grab a positive out of this today, let's go with that. So I actually thought that for the most part he moved pretty well, but to me playing is did we pressure? Did we do anything other than I think he was out there, and I think that was great. But that's still not what I'm looking for from an entire team, because everything is. When you're playing well, everything is connected, and we weren't connected today as far as doing what we can do.
The only way they can get connected is if he finishes these games the rest of the way. And as we've said multiple times on this show, Curtis, you just can't have confidence in that. I mean, it's one thing if we were having this discussion 5 games in, or 15 games in, or 20 games in. We're nearly 30 games into the season, and there's never been a stretch where you're not even worried about it. And here's the brutal truth. It ain't ever going to be that way, even if they do win the national championship, because with this cramping issue, it can happen at any time. I've dealt with them before, back in my playing days. Yeah, you can feel fantastic, as I'm sure he has going into some of these games, and all it takes is one moment where you start to feel it creeping up your legs, you start to feel it creeping up your back, and then it can debilitate you. I know some people out there want to say, well, cramping, come on now, play through them. It's incredibly difficult to do so, and he's also playing at a level that I never reached. So I can say that about, hell, if I was cramping up in beer league softball, I think I'd probably pull myself because it's hard to move. To do it at the highest level and not to do it to the best of your abilities, it is concerning. And we've seen him at his best. We've seen him when there seems to be no limitations, and then we can see when that level is gone.
Yeah.
I mean, look at some of his jumpers in the second half against Cincinnati. He's barely getting off the ground. It's like when Larry Bird had his back problem, and he's just barely able to shoot that. I didn't do a very good imitation of that on the stream if you're watching. But that's what it looks like. He can barely jump.
But I do think, like, this is the last night. This is the last. There's going to come a point where they're too late in the season for them to get enough games of him in succession playing through everything to feel good about March. This is the last port. It has to go from here on. Because if it happens again tonight, or it happens any time after tonight, and I think you just have to resign yourself to the fact that you're going to begin the NCAA tournament not knowing from game to game whether or not Darren Peterson's going to play and how long he's going to play.
It's a frightening thing, and I'll tell you this: I actually don't know what you do in Kansas City. You have to, if you get to the championship, you're playing 3 to 4 days in a row.
Particularly if you're sitting on that 3 line, and
it's a tough spot to be in.
They most of the bracketologies I've seen, they're still on that 3 line. You fall to the 4, then you've got the 1 seed in the Sweet 16. You want to avoid that. You want to stay on that 3 line, and they may have to go all the way through it to do it.
Yeah, with the glass floor too at T-Mobile, there's a lot of factors that are constantly spinning through my head, and I know that Bill Self and Darren Peterson are not the only ones thinking about that. Kelvin Sampson, the other guy coaching tonight, on the opposite sideline. It's been a 2-game losing streak for the Cougs, and they are
it's back-to-back losses.
There is no such thing as a 2-game losing
streak. 4
streak.
is a streak.
Yeah, and they
program rules.
They are still playing at a very high level, but it's not the same Houston team as last year that got to the national championship and had a really good opportunity to cut down the nets. I mean, they had a sizable lead on Florida before they didn't, and Florida was the one that was able to cut down the nets last year. Does this team have what it takes? I don't really know, but offensively, as Curtis was bringing up, transition, right? Being able to score off of misses, being able to score off turnovers. Kelvin Sampson said his team needs to score more in those transition moments.
What we've been all year is a jump shot shooting team, and that's okay. You can win a lot of games doing that. But at some point, you've got to get transition points. And that's the last 2 games that has been our biggest bugaboo, is we're having to play way too much in the half court, way too much. We're not scoring off our defense as much. We held them to 34% the second half. That's not easy to do against that team. Problem is that if you're not going to turn them over, their misses, we've got to turn into transition points.
So I think one of the big items of attention for Kansas tonight is efficient on offense. You don't let them get into a running game, and I think if they're efficient on offense, I think they're going to win this game by double digits. But will they be?
I remember watching these last two Houston teams, and certainly when you played them on the road, they could just completely overwhelm you. I mean, it was not quite 40 minutes of hell, and it's not quite, what do they call it, Press Virginia and wreaking havoc for Shaka Smart's group at VCU, where it's just you're constantly having one or two guys right up on you. It's not quite that anymore. They are still an incredibly physical group. Where I'm going to be watching tonight is how does that experience play into it? Because last year, you've got L.J. Cryer, who's one of the top point guards in the country. He had been in college for multiple years.
Was on the 21 Baylor title team.
I mean, across the board.
Yeah.
And now you still have Sharp back. You still have, the kid that transferred from Oklahoma, and he's, the last name starts with a U.
Oh, Uzan.
Uzan, yeah, Milos Uzan. Great three-point shooter. They've got guys with experience, but it is a more freshman-oriented team because you've got Flemings, who's an incredible guard, a little bit quicker than Keaton Wagner, but also reminds me a little bit of him and his ability to create his own shot. In the front court is where I'm paying attention to it because the last couple of years in the front court, my goodness, I'm not sure you could have any sort of post presence against them. No. Tonight, if KU is able to get that pick and roll game, that lob game with Flory Badunga, Bryson Tiller can have a good performance. As you said, I could see it being an 8 to 10 point win. Now, Vegas doesn't think that. They have the Cougars as a 1.5 point favorite. It just, to me, is going to come down to that front court play and also KU's ability to take care of the basketball. If Houston overwhelms them defensively and gets out and running a lot, talk about high percentage shots. I mean, you're shooting layups on the other end. If Kansas takes care of the basketball, they didn't do that against Iowa State, they did not do that against Cincinnati, they should win this game. And Bill Self should go to 41-0 on Big Monday. Kansas and Houston tonight, tip-off at 8 p.m., you can listen to the Kansas Nation show at 6 o'clock. That'll be right after we're done. You got Kansas pregame at 6:30. That'll lead you into the game. We also have postgame coverage as well. So don't turn that dial after we're done. Keep it locked into Sports Radio 810 WHB. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, talk some Royals baseball with David Lesky. They lost today to the Cubs. Downer. Right, that sucks, losing a spring training game. But I want to get David Lesky's thoughts on a couple of guys in camp. That's next on the program.
Kurtis Seaboldt.
Doesn't that tire you out after a while? Thinking of absolutely the most clever way to say everything?
On the program, weekdays from 2 to 6 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Look, we've had some pretty beautiful weather here lately. Oh, not the last few days. I know it's gotten really cold again. It just reminded us of how nice it was last week, right? That beautiful weather is going to be here. The good news is there's still some cold days. That means All Weather Decks can be working on your outdoor living space. All Weather Decks is Kansas City's best 24-time winner of the Angie Super Service Award. Listen, they probably helped somebody in your neighborhood. Check out their map links at allweatherdecks.net. You can find them online, allweatherdecks.net. There's a map link, shows where they've done jobs all over the metro and even beyond. I guarantee you they've done a bunch in your neighborhood. That's what they do, build the very best outdoor living spaces. Like I said, because they're only 6 or 7 weeks away from starting your project. That's right. About how long it takes to pull the permit is about how long it takes them to start. They'll be working, and when the beautiful weather's here, you'll have a new deck, a new patio, a new screened-in porch. If your deck is rotting, if your patio's falling apart, if you don't have a screened-in porch, if you don't have a great place to go outside and watch TV, nothing better than watching a game outside. Let All Weather Decks give you that. Outdoor fireplaces, fire pits. Yep, they do it all. Anything that comes with an outdoor living space, no matter how big that job is. Even extending the roof line. That's right, making it come out to where it looks like it was part of the original architect's plan. All Weather Decks does that as well. And like I said, A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau, Best of Houses Award winner. They've won every award. You can find those online at allweatherdecks.net. You can even get an estimate started online by going to allweatherdecks.net or call Cass and the guys at 913-206-1974. Kansas City's best when it comes to building your outdoor living spaces is All Weather Decks. Find them online at allweatherdecks.net and relax.
He's a husband, a dad, owner of a gym. He's also a police officer. Staying strong and pain-free isn't optional. It's safety. That's why David Boardman's a QC Kinetics patient.
My job is dependent on my physical ability and my physical fitness so that I can protect myself, so that I can go home safe to my family at the end of the night.
But severe knee pain nearly took that away. Doctors said surgery, shut down the workouts. David needed another option. That was QC Kinetics. They told him,
we're going to give you the opportunity to have not one, but
He's taken Larry King to a Prince concert. He's eaten Dairy Queen while watching a Duke game.
Certainly Duke is Duke.
He's seen the Princess Bride with his friend Earl.
Inconceivable.
Yeah, it's safe to say he's obsessed with the Royals. From inside the crown, it's David Leske on the program.
Talking Royals baseball with David Leske of Inside the Crown. Talked a lot of football today, a lot of college basketball. But the Royals were in action this afternoon. They fall to the Chicago Cubs 3-2 if you're into that sort of stuff. And Leske, I do want to say this about the game. I don't know if you know this, but 5 runs were scored. The only guys to homer in this one both have the last name of Rojas. I don't know if I found a hidden gem there. I'm sitting next to Kurtis. Maybe you could find it. But that might be the first time. That might be the only takeaway I have from this game. What about you?
That is probably the most important thing that happened today, is that Dos Rojas.
Dos Rojas. I like that.
Both homered there. Yeah, no. I didn't realize that. I was following along, and I saw Josh. They were so far between the homers that I'd forgotten the first one was Jefferson Rojas. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one.
Now, in all seriousness, one of the things I did catch from today's game actually came from Andy Rogers, with Seth Lugo throwing a harder slider this year. And of the conversations throughout this offseason, I know it seems that Seth Lugo, and coming off of a very poor second half, that maybe he has hit the wall, but I don't know. Was it just a matter that he wasn't healthy and he's going to be much better this year? How much of it was the inning workload from 2024? Are you buying stock in Lugo going into this year, or is he probably going to regress even more?
Well, I mean, you just don't know, right, until we see it. And today was a really good first start because I will say when there's an injury, when there's poor performance and then an injury follows, you almost are happy about it, right? Like it goes from, well, why is he doing this to, oh, that's why he's doing this. And so I think from that perspective, you were kind of happy to see him end the year on the IL. Of course, there's always the phantom injury, especially when it's a back or something like that it's hard to prove. But to see him go out today, and I think the thing about Seth Lugo that keeps me optimistic about him is he's such a smart pitcher that you feel like, okay, yeah, something got to him, whether it was innings, injury, age, something. He's going to fix it. And so it's 2 innings in 1 spring training start against a lot of minor leaguers. So I don't want to take too much into it, but I mean, I look at his pitch mix. 33% fastballs, he threw 21% last year on average. 19% sliders, he threw 6% on average. I think he's trying some stuff. I think he's trying to be a little bit different. And yeah, Andy mentioned the slider, harder, 2.4 miles per hour harder than last year on average. 4 swings, 4 whiffs. You will take that all day long. I have faith that Seth Lugo can turn things around, at least to be an innings eater, to be that guy who, and not a Jordan Lyles innings eater, like an actual, you don't mind having him on the mound for 6 innings every night innings eater. But yeah, he's going to leave. The opponent's going to have 3 runs when he leaves, and it's up to you to score 4. And I think that's kind of what I'm counting on from Seth Lugo. With like a little faint glimmer of hope in the back of my mind that maybe he's more than that. But I mean, if he's that guy, I know they're paying him a lot, but the money's spent. Who cares? You know, if he's that guy, I think the Royals are in pretty good shape.
Now, I know a lot of people are confident in the rotation. They feel better about the bullpen this year and adding Matt Strahm and Nick Mears. Where everybody seems to go back to, though, is the offense and is the outfield, which right now projects to be Isaac Collins in left field, a platoon of Lane Thomas and Kyle Isbell in center, and Jack Caglione in right. Are you still surprised that they were not able to land a big bat, or are you okay with the logic of, look, everybody we were trying to get had way too high of an asking price, and let's see if Caglione can reach his ceiling. Let's see if Isaac Collins can be that high floor player, and a Lane Thomas, Kyle Isbell platoon can work out well. Are you okay with them just deciding to go with who they have, or do you still left wanting a little bit more? They didn't get that impact bat.
Well, I mean, I think I'm a little bit surprised they didn't get somebody else, but I understand it. Like, you know, the Red Sox were marketing Jarren Duran as if he was the guy from 2024, and he's only been that guy once in his career. And so good for them. Good for them to try to get the most they could. I don't have a problem with the Royals not paying that price. Brendan Donovan, I don't know that they could have matched what the Mariners gave up. Taylor Ward, from what I understand, they were close on Taylor Ward, and it just didn't happen because the Orioles offered up a guy who's got upside with control and team control, and the Royals couldn't match that. I know Grayson Rodriguez has injury issues, but that's another question. And you just look at the free agents, and I don't know. I didn't care for Harrison Bader. He had a good year on the surface, but the underlying stats were really ugly. They were basically what he'd been for 3 or 4 years before that. And I wrote this, I don't know, a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, something like that, that when you're going to sign outfielders, if you're going to go get Austin Hayes, you've got to be sure he's better than Isaac Collins, or willing to play him over Jack Caglione, which I don't think Austin Hayes is. I'm not sure Harrison Bader will play center field. It's just a little different story. But, I mean, all these guys, it became a situation where I don't think they were they were definitively better than Collins or somebody that you delay Caglione's development for. And so it's become a situation where they need Jack Caglione to hit. They need Isaac Collins to be, 85% of what he was last year. I don't know if that's the right percentage number. I mean, you get the idea. And so I think that they're in that spot where they are counting on ifs, which is not typically the best practice you can have. But the market was a bad market this year. And you can go back last year, everybody wanted Santander or Jurickson Profar. I mean, there were a few guys who have hit, so there were things they could have done. But it's been a really rough outfield market for the last couple of seasons, and last year they paid dearly for it. This year we'll see, because they've at least got more upside this year, I would say.
Now, in regards to Jack Caglione, I think he's such an interesting case because he's incredibly young, but based on last year, the performance that he had, and then they didn't add in the impact bat, the pressure's on to be good immediately. So in your opinion, at what point would you start to panic a little bit if the struggle continues into which month or how many games in? Because I don't think he has that same luxury that Carter Jensen has, whereas Carter Jensen could struggle out of the gates. Nobody's hitting the panic button. If Jack goes and hits 160 in April, I'm not saying they would demote him or anything like that, but there would be some obvious concern of, oh boy, he really hasn't fixed anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good news for the Royals, and this is true for Jensen and Caglione, is, there's pressure on them because they didn't go get somebody else, really. But they do have a really nice, solid core of 4 in the offense. So they don't have to be the first, second, third, or fourth option in the offense, which, I think about like when Alex Gordon and Billy Butler came up, and they were the guys, right? Like they came up, and it was, okay, they're here, we can hit now. It didn't work for a while, obviously. But Garcia, Witt, Pasquantino, and Salvi help quite a bit, I think. But to your point, Caglione was, he was bad last year. I know the expected stats painted a much better slugging percentage, and if you're looking at just the numbers, I think it's really easy to say he's an easy bounce back. It's hard to say bounce back for a guy who has 250 plate appearances or whatever it is, but he's an easy guy to say he can be better. But we saw it up close. We saw the swing decisions were poor his first time up. He walked a lot more, and everybody attributed that to better plate discipline in September. I thought he was just really passive, personally. But the talent is clearly there, and so I think, I don't know that it's necessarily the numbers. I think it's an evaluation from the Royals side of his mindset every day, and also what he's doing. If it's April 30th and he's hitting 160, but every single ball is scalded, and he truly is the toughest luck hitter in baseball, okay, that's a different story than if he's swinging at 38% of pitches outside the strike zone and hitting a lot of 60% ground balls or whatever it is. So I think there's an evaluation of how he gets there, but at some point they're going. And this is putting the cart way ahead of the horse, obviously. But if he struggles to the end of April, I think they're going to have a conversation about, okay, let's get him right, and let's get him back for the stretch run, and figure it out until then.
Now, looking at who they have projected to be on the 26-man roster, maybe some guys that are on the fringe, Is there anybody that you're looking at expecting some pretty significant regression? And on the flip side, is there anybody you're looking at and going, oh, I expect them to have a big jump this year based on what they did last year?
From the offensive side, it's pretty interesting because it's really easy to not see a lot of regression from most of these guys. I mean, I think Bobby Witt, one of the best players in baseball, if not the best player in baseball. Vinny Pasquantino, I think you feel good about the power. I think there might be a little progression there in the average, although it's 2 years in a row. This is kind of what he is, I think. I worry about Salvi falling off because of the age. And I said this on the Coffin Corner podcast, I think it was last week. I'm not going to predict he's going to anymore because I've just been wrong every year, and I'll just be late to that. If he falls off, I am more than willing to say I was late. I'm done predicting that he's going to struggle, which means it's going to happen this year. So I made that happen. But you look around, and I think Isaac Collins, and it didn't happen for the Royals, I think he's a pretty big regression candidate just based on the batted ball data. But if he regresses, he's still better than what the Royals had in left field. So it's kind of, it doesn't hurt the Royals quite so much. I think that I've said this a billion times, so I'll say it 1,000,000,001 now. I would not have given India $8 million. I get why they did it, and I totally see the rationale and why they think he can bounce back. It wouldn't surprise. I mean, I think he will be better than he was last season. Pitching side, I'd look for. I think Noah Cameron. You're not going to see a 2.99 ERA, in my opinion. I don't think anybody would argue too much with that, other than his family. Which, if you're listening, Cameron, I apologize, but his, the numbers they just don't support that. So I think we'll see a little bit there. I'm a little bit worried about Michael Wacha. He seemed to wear down a bit down the stretch to me. I don't know, and maybe this is just my opinion clouding things, but every time he pitched, and I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but it just felt like he was on the verge of disaster and never really hit. So maybe it was just a stupid opinion, but I'm a little bit worried. The strikeout rate fell a lot. Just seemed more hittable. Changeup wasn't as good, and that's his bread and butter. So I'm a bit worried about that. And the other guy who I think Lucas Erceg is due for a pretty big strikeout bounce back, which he was down under a 20% strikeout rate last season. His stuff should never be there. I think that was a lot of injury. I think there were some other factors, but I think he'll bounce back quite a bit.
Talking with David Lesky of Inside the Crown here on the program. Are you worried that at some point this year they're going to have to move Carlos Estevez out of the closer's role? Because last year, I mean, he led the league in saves. Never a bad thing to have 42 saves. But when we keep talking about numbers and what the data supports, I wouldn't say the data supported him being a dominant closer with 42 saves. So are you worried at any point they're going to have to make that switch? I mean, he is entering his mid-30s, and there always can be that fall-off for closers. Or do you still have confidence that, hey, last year, some of those struggles were due to that back injury he had in camp where he had the slower buildup. Now he appears to be ready to go.
I think with a reliever, you always have to be worried about that, right? I mean, they're volatile. Part of it is they're pitching one inning at a time, and a lot can it's a small sample every time out. But yeah, I mean, the strikeouts, he was at 20.1% on his strikeout rate last year, down from 23.6% the year before and 27.8% the year before that. It's a pretty consistent drop. And if it falls any more, I think he's in trouble. I think he's got to get back to that 22, 23% strikeout rate. That's still actually slightly below average for a reliever. But it's close enough that I think he can live with that. But yeah, I mean, I think that there is a concern there. I mean, he had a 234 BABIP allowed, which means that he was probably a little bit lucky in that regard. I worry a little bit that he gives up a lot of fly balls, and the fences are 10 feet closer most of the stadium now. So there, I looked at the numbers, and there weren't as many extra home runs as I thought there would be from him, but it wasn't zero. Where I have confidence is I feel good about the rest of the bullpen. They can figure it out. But yeah, I mean, if we're talking in, let's see, it's February. So if we're talking in 6 months at the end of August and Carlos Estevez isn't the closer, I will not be surprised. I'll say that.
Now, going to the fences coming in, I know that Daniel Mack did a ton of research. That whole analytical department have a ton of data on why this benefits the offense far more than it really hurts the pitching staff. Is there one hitter that you're looking at where you say this is going to better them long-term more than anybody else on the roster?
I don't know that there's one. I think Michael Garcia, I think his power is going to play up a little bit more, just having fewer feet to have to hit the ball. I also think that my opinion on Garcia, I don't know that he was ever going to develop a lot more power, but I think that as he learns pitchers and learns the league, I think he'll know which pitches he can like turn and burn on a little bit and get a few more home runs from that. And if you're smaller outfield will help all that. I think Vinny Pasquantino, I think he is a smart enough hitter that he can tailor his swing a little bit more to it. And they've said this before, but the Royals this is such an interesting case because you never get to augment the ballpark to fit the particular team and have it last through history. But like this is the team they're going to have, and roughly, and there's some changes, but they're in the last 4 or 5 years of Kauffman Stadium, so they can really tailor it to this team, and I think all these guys are going to benefit. The other guy, I don't know that you're going to see. I mean, he won't benefit for as long, but Salvador Perez, I think he's got to get to 350 home runs to have a really legitimate Hall of Fame case. I know a lot of people think he's already there. I don't think he's quite there yet. This is going to make it easier. So I think long-term legacy, I think Salvador Perez might benefit more than anybody.
And last one here for you, Lesky. Really appreciate your time. We know the goal is to make the postseason, but honestly, with how stacked the American League East is, I'm not sure you can be a shoo-in by just gunning for the wild card. So my question to you is the Royals will win the American League Central over the Tigers and Guardians if they do what?
I think if they hit. I mean, it's funny because everybody, the Royals offense has questions. There's no doubt about that. The Guardians offense has more questions. The Tigers offense, I think, has more questions than people realize. I mean, you look up and down their lineup, and you've got their 3-4 hitters and they platoon a lot, so then they move guys around. So Kerry Carpenter and Riley Green, they couldn't hit lefties last year. Spencer Torkelson fell off from his hot start. He wasn't bad, but he fell off. Gleyber Torres doesn't have any power. Colt Keith has not really done it. And then I'm looking at their lineup on Roster Resource. Wenzel Perez, Zach McKinstry, I don't believe in that. Again, I don't know that any team in the AL Central can actually hit. So I think that if the Royals score, I'll throw out a number. There's no research behind this, but if they score 730 runs, I think they have a really good shot to win the division.
All right, we'll see if it happens. Still a ways to go in spring training, but finally glad that baseball is back. Lesky, thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jack.
There he goes. That's David Lesky of Inside the Crown. If you don't subscribe, then you're just doing it wrong. He puts out phenomenal stuff on the Royals, just right there in your inbox, too. Easy to find.
It's detailed, and he has links and video stuff. It's fantastic. If you love Royals baseball and you weren't following David, what are you doing?
Yeah. No,
what are you even?
What are you even? What are you doing? Blasphemy if you're not doing it. Because he is one of the greatest follows out there. And this is the perfect time, too, to become more knowledgeable on the team, on the players. There's a lot of people in camp. There's a lot of players, new coaches on the staff. If you follow Lesky, you're going to know a lot more than maybe you would have if you didn't going into the regular season.
Because it's easy, like, who's on the team, who's in the... Find out now.
Yeah.
So that when the season begins, you go, oh, yeah, I was reading about him.
And you always feel better around your friends when you're watching a game, and they'll go, who was that guy?
Well,
and you go, oh, yeah, you didn't know he was great in camp, came over from here, was a Rule 5 pick, was a minor league guy for years, and you throw all these numbers out there, you look like a genius.
You do.
Because Lesky's a genius, and he puts all that information right for you on this Substack.
Your friends will be jealous of you, and women will love you.
Yep. Royals baseball, baby. Royals baseball. We'll take one of our final breaks here of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
The program with Soren Petro.
By the way, when you're telling these little stories, here's a good idea. Have a point. It makes it so much more interesting for the listener.
Weekdays from 2 to 6 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Listen, we're going to be broadcasting from the NFL Combine for the next couple of days, and we're doing it because we rode in style to Indianapolis. Roberts Robinson hooked us up with a beautiful Chevy Tahoe. Go up and check out the great lineup of vehicles that they've got. Whether you're in a market for a pickup truck, maybe it's an SUV, maybe it's a car, Roberts Robinson has got you covered. You can find them online at robertsrobinson.com, and when you get to the dealership, you'll notice something. No pressure. That's right. Nobody's sweating you. Nobody trying to hurry you through some process or tell you about how, I don't know if I can do this kind of deal. No. Listen, when you go to get a car, what do you want? It starts with getting top dollar on your trade. Check. Roberts Robinson does that. They've got a great reputation. Check out the great reviews from people who just love the car buying experience. Listen, Mike Robinson and his team, they have years of experience. They've been doing this for a long time, and they know what's important is to get you into a great vehicle at a great price. Check out their reviews. People love going to Roberts Robinson, and you will as well. They rave about the trade-in values, the bonus cash on eligible vehicles. Roberts Robinson just goes above and beyond. And I'll tell you what, when it comes to service, can't get any better than them coming and picking up the car and taking it, doing the service, and then bringing the car back to you. Listen, my daughter's car needed an oil change. Roberts Robinson came down, got the vehicle, took it up, got it done. Also needed some sensors checked. They did that as well. Their service team is absolutely fantastic. Never any high-pressure tactics on anything. They're the top dealer. Trust me, for whether it's service or buying a new or used vehicle. Go see. They're not the typical dealership. It's relaxed. It's comfortable. Good people who genuinely want to help you out with whatever your vehicle need is. Mike and his team are absolutely the best. Whether it's Robbie in service, Tim in sales, Jordan in finance, they go above and beyond. Straight answers, respecting your time. So go see him today. Roberts Robinson, Chevrolet GMC. They're online at robertsrobinson.com. See for yourself why they just make it easy.
Men, we all know how important sex is in a relationship, both for you and your partner. But erectile dysfunction ruins sex, which can often have serious impacts on your relationship as well. This is Jeff for Heartland Men's Health, and if ED is a problem in your life, you understand the impacts it has on you and the one you love. But I'm here to tell you that ED is a treatable condition, and almost without exception, you can have really good sex again. At Heartland Men's Health, we're experts in treating ED. We've treated tens of thousands of men with protocols that are effective in well over 90% of cases, which means if you're like most guys, good sex will be the norm. You could even last up to an hour or more and bring a level of intimacy for you and your partner that might just
But first, the La Feta Delicatessen, end of the hour answer. He led the league in hit by pitch 7 years in a row. Who is he? I just noticed that one, he's still around. He's 85 today. And it's continuing our theme from earlier, born in St. Louis, Missouri. Apparently I've been hitting a lot. You won't get this one. His name is Ron Hunt, and he led the league from 1968 through 1974, including a Major League record 50 in 1971.
Battered and bruised. I would have guessed Carlos Quentin.
50.
I know that he led the league a couple of times. I don't know about 7. I mean, ball magnet.
I'm telling you what, man.
He must have been crowding the plate.
Yeah, he averaged 27 per season. I would think so.
Tough
Crazy.
SOB.
Helped out his 368 on base.
That'll do it. Painful way to do it, but it is one way to do it. So a tough guy, as we know. And if you play hockey and you played for Team USA.
And he was he played in Montreal, so he knew hockey.
He knew all about it. Anybody that is a hockey player is a tough guy, let's be honest here.
Yeah.
I mean, football guys are tough. Boxers are tough. Hockey is tough as well because not only are you punching guys and you're running into people, you got to skate.
Yes.
I can't even do that if you gave me an entire rink to myself. You got to do and worry about a puck and worry about all this type of stuff. But I do want to get to some thoughts here. Audio that was conjured up by Kurtis Seaboldt. And Jack Hughes did talk about his game-winning goal.
Overtime, anything can happen. I mean, they have very skilled players. We have very skilled players. It's just up and down the rink, kind of like a little grudge match, like who's going to make the first mistake, who's going to give up the first odd man rush, and just a good play by Larks and Z getting up the ice, and then obviously Z found me.
Just a shot of him standing there with his tooth missing.
That's hockey, baby.
Gold medal.
Hellebuck.
That's
Jack Hughes. U.S. bringing home the gold. The call, the game itself.
Yeah.
Overtime.
If you were there, I was 14. I saw the 81. I was 14.
You're so lucky.
Standing in a department store.
It's not quite that, but for our generation now, maybe it will be because nobody's going to forget
huge.
Team USA taking down Canada for the gold. Have a great one, Kansas City. Seren, we'll talk to you tomorrow.